The sky over Caldus was the color of a fresh bruise, a sickly, greenish purple that promised nothing good. Jace Arden tasted the air and grimaced. It was like licking a battery, a constant metallic tang that clung to the back of his throat, even through his helmet's filtration system. This planet was not just dead, it was actively rotting. He was an ash cleaner. That was the official title on his work manifest. A cosmic joke for a man who used to command bio-warfare battalions. He had once been Major Jace Arden, Terran Alliance, specialist in the very plagues that now choked this world. Now, he was just Jace, a glorified janitor in a hazmat suit, shoveling the remnants of his old life into containment barrels for 50 credits a day. Ribbons of bio-ash, the very weapon he had refused to deploy, drifted through the thin atmosphere like malignant silk. They were beautiful, in a way, catching the dim light of the system's distant star and shimmering with a faint, internal energy. But Jace knew what that shimmer was. It was a nanite-driven hunger, a biological directive to disassemble, consume, and rewrite. Below him, the landscape was a testament to that directive. The trees were skeletal, warped into agonizing shapes, their branches like gnarled claws scraping the toxic sky. The few creatures that survived were mockeries of life, things with too many legs or not enough skin, skittering through the gray dust. He had been on Caldus for 612 days. He knew this because he scratched a line on the inside of his cramped living container every time the planet completed its lopsided wobble around its star. 612 days of penance. Or perhaps just a slow-motion execution. He had been found guilty of insubordination, dereliction of duty, and treason for defying a direct order during the Battle of Xylos. The order, from Admiral Rowan Hale himself, had been to unleash the bioash on a civilian colony that was providing shelter to Kareth resistance fighters. Jace had refused. He had argued. He had screamed over the comms that it was a war crime, that the ash was indiscriminate, that it would render the entire sector uninhabitable for centuries. Hale, in his cold, precise voice, had replied, "Your sentiment is noted, Major, and your career is over." Hale had triggered the deployment remotely. The screams from the colony had been comprehensive. The Alliance, not wanting a public court-martial that would expose Ash's true nature, had simply buried him. They had stripped him of his rank, labeled him neurologically unstable, and exiled him to the ash front, the quarantine zones where men like him went to be forgotten. He was supposed to die here, either from the ash or from the crushing despair. The universe, it seemed, had a dark sense of humor. He wasn't just unstable. He was, perhaps, broken. He heard the ash. It was not a sound, not really, but a persistent, low-level static in his brain, a high-frequency buzz that felt like insects crawling behind his eyeballs. He blamed it on nerve damage from a plasma blast, a convenient lie to tell himself. He never told anyone else. Out here. Admitting you heard voices was a fast track to the dissection table. "Arden, are you daydreaming or just admiring the view?" Sal's voice crackled over the local comm, jarring him back to the present. Sal was a lifer, a man who had been cleaning worlds since before Jace was born. His face, a roadmap of cynicism. "The view's lousy, Sal," Jace grunted, kicking a lump of fused, slagged earth. "And I'm not daydreaming. I'm composing a poem about the inherent futility of our existence. It's a real knee-slapper. Save it for the bar. We've got a high-density pocket registering 2 clicks east. Command wants it sampled and contained before the next squall. Rook, you're on sensors. Try not to trip over your own feet." Rook, the new guy. He was barely 20, his face still holding that absurd optimism that Caldus hadn't yet managed to scour away. "Yes, Sergeant," Rook chirped, his voice painfully earnest. Jace sighed, the sound loud in his helmet. "He's not a sergeant, kid. He's just grumpy. And it's clicks, not clicks. You're not ordering shoes online. Right, Jace. Sorry, Sal. Just move, Sal muttered. They walked in silence, a three-man team against a world of poison. The only sounds were the crunch of their heavy boots on the gray crust and the rhythmic hiss of their rebreathers. Jace kept his rifle in a low, ready position. Habit. There was nothing here to shoot that wouldn't make the problem worse. You couldn't kill a nanite plague with a pulse round. Rook was the first to spot the change. Sal Jace. The particulate count is just its climbing. Fast. That's not a squall. That's a... The world went from gray to black. The ash storm hit them not like weather, but like a physical blow. A wall of roiling, angry gray dust moving at over 100 clicks an hour. The wind howled, a deep, resonant bass note that Jace felt in his teeth. The buzzing in his head escalated to a deafening shriek. "Seals! Check your seals!" Sal bellowed over the roar. "Form up back to back!" Jace grabbed Rook by the harness and slammed the kid's backplate against his own, Sal doing the same. They formed a tight triangle, their helmet lamps cutting three pathetic, swirling beams into the chaos. The ash was so thick it was like being underwater. Jace watched his suit's external temperature gauge climb. The nanites were active, trying to find a way in, their metabolic process generating heat. "My filters!" Rook screamed. The panic in his voice was a sharp, ugly thing. "Oh, gods! My filters are failing, I can't taste it." "No, you can't, kid," Jace said, his voice a low, steady calm he did not feel. "That's panic. Your suit's fine. Breathe slowly. 4, 8. Like we practiced." "It's hot," Rook thrashed, breaking the formation. "Rook, no, stay put," Sal shouted, reaching for him. It was too late. The kid stumbled, tripped over a twisted root, and went down. He fell face first, and the impact was just enough to compromise the seal on his neck ring. A microfracture. A hairline crack. It was all the ash needed. Jace saw it happen in the grotesque, strobing light of their lamps. The bio-ash swarmed the breach. It looked like a living, liquid gray shadow, pouring into the kid's suit. Rook's scream was not human. It was the sound of a man being unmade from the inside out. His suit's internal monitors, projected on Jace's HUD as a team link, went insane. Warning, catastrophic biological cascade. Warning, genetic dissolution in progress. Jace lunged, pulling a stasis patch from his belt. A desperate, futile gesture. He fell to his knees beside the convulsing figure. Through the kid's visor, he saw he wished he hadn't. Rook's face was not a face anymore. It was a slurry of melting flesh and bone, eyes dissolving into milky puddles. The kid's hand, thrashing, gripped Jace's arm, and the glove just liquefied. "Jace, get back, now!" Sal was yelling, pulling at his shoulder. Jace was frozen, staring at the horror. The kid's rebreather finally flatlined. The screaming stopped. Jace was coated in the stuff, the active, hot ash that had just devoured a man. It clung to his suit, his helmet, his visor, and nothing happened. He just knelt there, covered in the plague, breathing recycled air. The storm began to settle as quickly as it had arrived. The wall of dust moving on, leaving a vibrating silence in its wake. Sal was panting, his voice ragged. "Gods, oh gods, he's Jace! Are you hit?" Jace looked down at the puddle of biological sludge that had been Rook. He felt the familiar, cold numbness settle over him. The armor of a man who had seen too much and felt too little. He pushed himself to his feet, his limbs heavy. "I'm fine, Sal," he said, his voice flat. He keyed his main comm, patching through to the orbital dispatcher. "This is Cleanup Team 3. We've had a containment breach. Rook's compromised. His suit's a total loss. And his everything else, too." He paused, a dark, jagged laugh bubbling in his chest. He couldn't stop it. Either I'm immortal, he whispered, the words lost in the helmet's static, or I'm already dead and haven't gotten the memo. The dispatcher's bored voice clicked in his ear. Acknowledged. 3. Is the high-density pocket secured? Jace wanted to scream. He wanted to aim his rifle at the sky and hold down the trigger until the power cell melted. No, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. It's not. We're a little busy liquefying. Jace, Sal said, his voice low, his rifle raised. Shut up. And look. Sal was pointing his weapon, not at Jace, but at a crater just 50 meters away, revealed as the dust settled. The storm had uncovered something. It was massive. At first, Jace thought it was a crashed ship, an organic-looking Kareth scout, but it was breathing, a slow, shallow rise and fall that shifted the gray dust. It was a creature, at least 30 meters long, a six-legged monstrosity of sinew and chiseled, living armor. Its hide was a deep, midnight blue, now caked with ash and weeping a thick, bioluminescent fluid from a dozen gaping wounds. A Kareth war beast. By the stars, Sal whispered. Tharoon, a royal Tharoon. What is it doing here? The beast was dying. Jace could see it. Its energy signature was erratic, the faint glow of its internal biocircuitry flickering like a faulty lamp. It was caught in the crater, half buried in the very ash that was killing it. Jace's helmet HUD lit up, a new priority order overriding everything else. It wasn't from the dispatcher. It was from Terran Command, High Orbit, the ones who pulled the strings. Priority target, Kareth Royal Warbeast. Designate for gene harvest. Do not waste war asset. Jace stared at the words. Do not waste war assets. The same cold, pragmatic logic that had murdered a colony. The same logic that had left him here to rot. He looked at the dissolving remains of Rook. He looked at the magnificent, alien creature, gasping its last breaths in a pit of poison. It was an enemy. Yes, it had probably killed hundreds of Terran soldiers, but it was dying, and it was alive. Jace, Sal said, his voice nervous. You got the order. Tag it. We tag it. We get a bonus. A big one. Enough to get off this rock. Jace watched the Tharoon. A massive, sapphire blue eye rolled in its socket, settling on him. It was an intelligent gaze. It was, he realized, terrified. No, Jace said. What do you mean? No. Sal's voice was rising. Jace, don't be a fool. Tag the damn thing. I am a fool, Sal, Jace said, and he began to walk towards the crater. Arden, what are you doing? Sal shrieked. That thing'll tear you apart. The ash around it is hot. It's dying, Sal. It's not tearing anyone apart. Warning. Hostile. Kareth lifeform. Maintain safe distance. His suit blared at him. He ignored it. He stood at the lip of the crater, looking down at the dying beast. The ash was thick in the pit, a soupy, gray sludge. The Tharoon's breathing was a wet, ragged gasp. Jace could feel the buzzing in his head again, stronger now, a painful thrum that seemed to harmonize with the creature's weak life signs. Jace, command is hailing. Sal's voice was frantic. They're demanding Jace. They're ordering you to stand down. They'll send a strike team. They'll kill you. They've been trying to kill me for 2 years. Sal, they're just not very good at it. Jace looked at the order on his HUD. He found the cancel icon and slammed his thumb against it. The order vanished. Instead, he keyed his own log entry. Target is non-viable. Terminating harvest protocol. Initiating medical aid. He didn't know why he typed it. Maybe just to piss off the Admiral, who would one day read this log. He slid down the side of the crater, his boots sinking into the wet ash. Tharoon's massive head turned, the blue eye fixing on him. A low growl vibrated from its chest, so deep it rattled Jace's armor. Easy, big fella, Jace murmured, raising his hands. I'm not here to hurt you. Well, I'm not here to hurt you more. He was close now. He could smell the beast, a strange ozone and ammonia scent, even through his filters. He saw the problem. The ash had pooled in its wounds, but it was also being drawn to the ruptures in its biocircuitry, shorting out its systems. It was being poisoned and electrocuted at the same time. He knew, with a certainty that was both insane and absolute, what he had to do. "Sal," he said, his voice calm, "you might want to look away. This is going to get weird." "Arden, don't you dare!" Jace reached up and hit the seals on his helmet. The hiss of depressurization was the loudest sound in the world. He unclipped the helmet and pulled it off, dropping it into the dust. The air of Caldus hit him. It was knives, sharp, cold, and tasting of tin, death, and something ancient. His eyes watered instantly. He coughed, a dry, racking sound. "You're crazy. You're dead." Sal was screaming. "Already dead, Sal." Jace choked, his lungs burning. "Haven't gotten the memo." He ripped his gauntlet off, his bare hand exposed to the toxic air. The skin prickled, then began to burn. He ignored it. He staggered to the beast's largest wound, a gaping tear in its shoulder where the ash was thickest. He plunged his bare hand into the sludge. The pain was beyond description. It was not a fire. It was a searing, absolute cold that felt like his bones were being turned to glass and shattered. It was a million needles of ice, all dipped in acid, injecting his nerves with pure, unfiltered agony. He screamed, a raw, wordless sound torn from his throat. But something else was happening. The bio-ash reacted to him. It surged, not away from him, but towards him. It flowed from the Tharun's wound, a living, gray tide, scaling his hand, his wrist, his forearm. It was drawn to his blood, his skin, his very essence. It wasn't eating him like it ate Rook. It was bonding with him. He could feel it rewriting his skin, his nerves. A complex, shimmering gray tracery, like a dead constellation, burned its way across his flesh, from his knuckles to his elbow. And then it glowed. A faint, cold, gray light. In his head, the buzzing he had dismissed as PTSD, as nerve damage, exploded. It wasn't static. It wasn't insects. It was a presence. A vast, cold, and ancient intelligence. A network of billions of nanites, all whispering at once. It had been dormant, a background noise. Now, awakened by his touch, by his unique biology that did not dissolve. It saw him. It was like having an ocean poured into his skull. He felt the cold, collective hunger of the ash, its simple, terrible purpose. And for a second, he felt it hesitate. At that exact moment, the bruised sky tore open. It was not a sound. It was a cessation of sound. A pressure change that popped Jace's ears. A shadow fell over the crater, blotting out the dim sun. Hanging in the sky, as silent as a tomb, was a Kareth dreadnought. It was not a machine. It was a creature. A living, organic starship that looked like a 1,000-meter-long leviathan. All spines and pulsating, dark purple carapace. It hadn't jumped to this position. It had simply unfolded itself from a dimension Jace couldn't name. "Oh, shit," Sal whispered over the comm Jace had left dangling on his suit. Jace's helmet comm, still linked to the orbital net, crackled to life. It was the Terran dispatcher, his voice no longer bored, but pitched high with pure panic. All assets evac now Kareth Fleet Element present. The sector is compromised. We are bugging out. Get to the gods." The transmission ended in a burst of static. High above, Jace saw the faint, desperate flares of Terran dropships, the ships meant to retrieve them burning for orbit, leaving them behind without a backward glance. He was still on his knees, one hand buried in the tharoon, the other arm held up, pulsing with gray light. He was in agony. His lungs were on fire, and he realized, completely and utterly abandoned. A column of light, pale and shimmering, descended from the dreadnought. It was not a transporter beam. It was a focused, gravitic column, and it deposited a group of figures onto the gray dust, 50 meters from the crater's edge. They were Kareth, royal guards, at least 8 of them, clad in articulated armor of polished, living bone. Their bio-rifles were raised, their alien faces hidden behind smoked black visors, and at their center, one figure glided, not walked, towards him. She was tall, taller than any of her guards. Her armor was not the bone white of her soldiers, but a glistening, iridescent black, like an insect's carapace. It seemed to move with her, fluid and alive. A second skin. She wore no helmet. Her skin was a pale, alabaster white, and her hair was the color of a raven's wing, pulled back in severe, intricate braids. She was beautiful, and she was as terrifying as the void. Empress Kalith. She moved with an unnatural grace, her guards fanning out, their weapons all trained on the single, unarmored human kneeling in the mud. Jace felt a hysterical laugh build in his chest. He was in shock. He was dying. He was marked by a plague. And now, the single most powerful Kareth in the galaxy was walking towards him. He managed a weak, bloody grin, the toxic air stinging his lips. "Lost, Your Highness," he rasped, his voice a broken thing. "The tourist information booth is back about 5 light years." The Empress stopped. Her gaze was as cold as the ash in his veins. She looked at her dying, colossal tharoon. Then she looked at the small, pathetic human kneeling beside it, one hand keeping its life sign stable, the other arm a beacon of glowing, gray power. Her expression was utterly unreadable. She said nothing. She glided past her guards, who tensed, their rifles whining as they charged, but they did not stop her. She came to the opposite side of the tharoon's massive head, kneeling in the sludge, a perfect, impossible mirror to him. Jace stared, his vision blurring. Empress Kalith looked at the glowing, intricate pattern of ash that had claimed his arm. Then, slowly, deliberately, she reached her own gloved hand down, dipping her fingers into the same toxic mixture of ash and biofluid leaking from her beast's wound. She leaned across Tharoon's head. Her face was inches from his. Her eyes, he saw now, were not black, but a deep, piercing violet. She reached out and laid her ash-covered fingers on his arm, right over the glowing pattern. Jace felt a jolt, not of pain, but of connection. A circuit being completed. It was a shock that ran from his arm, through his chest, and straight into the screaming, nascent intelligence in his head. The ash on his arm flared, the gray light turning a brilliant, shocking white. The Empress drew a new line, a Kareth sigil, through the pattern, marking him, claiming him, sealing the bond. Her voice was not a shout, but it cut through the wind and the silence, echoing across the wasteland, with the absolute authority of a physical law. "You touched my dying beast in the war ash. From this moment, you are mine." Jace woke up with a gasp, his lungs seizing before the air flooded in. It was warm, humid, and smelled like ozone and damp earth, a vast improvement on the toxic soup of Kaldis. For a moment, he thought he was back in a nutrient tank, but the surface beneath him was soft, yielding, and had no acrid chemical tang. He was in a room, if you could call it that. The walls were a deep, pearlescent purple, curving up to a ceiling that glowed with a faint, biotic light. There was no furniture, just a raised platform he was lying on, which seemed to be part of the floor. The walls were pulsing, a slow, steady, rhythmic pulse, like a massive heart beating somewhere just out of sight. The air vibrated with it. He sat up, his entire body screaming in protest. His throat felt like he had swallowed hot gravel. His arm. He looked down. The agony was gone, replaced by a strange, tingling numbness. The bio-ash was still there, but it was no longer the chaotic, burning tracery. It was a permanent, intricate pattern, a sleeve of shimmering, silvery gray that looked like it was under his skin. Not on it. It was stark and beautiful against his flesh, a complex network of alien script and star charts, culminating in the Kareth sigil the Empress had burned into him. The sigil itself was a shade darker, like a brand. His tattered, filthy hazmat suit was gone, replaced by a simple, sleeveless tunic and loose trousers, made of a material that felt like spun silk. He was clean. Someone had cleaned him. The thought made his skin crawl. "Well," he rasped, his voice cracking, "if this is heaven, the architect needs meds. This whole place throbs." "It is the Velkareth," a voice said. Not the Empress's voice. This one was male, sharp, and dripping with contempt. "A living dreadnought, and it throbs because it is alive. A concept you metal folk seem to struggle with." Jace's head snapped toward the entrance, which was not a door, but an aperture that had dilated open in the wall. A Kareth guard stood there, the same bone-white armor Jace had seen on Kaldis. This one, however, had his helmet off. His skin was a pale, aristocratic gray, his eyes a piercing, intelligent yellow. His features were sharp, angular, and currently set in a mask of profound disgust. "And you must be the welcoming committee," Jace said, swinging his legs off the platform. His muscles ached, but everything worked. "Do I get a complimentary fruit basket? Or do you just skip to the part where you vivisect the ignorant metal folk?" Kareth's lip curled. "I am Captain Reth Kalen, and you are my prisoner. The Empress has questions for you. Get up." "I am up. See?" Jace spread his hands. "No fruit basket. Then, shame." "I was really hoping for some of those little melons." Reth's hand twitched toward the bio-rifle, slung over his back. "Your levity is a racial failing. It is why you lose wars." "Do we lose wars last I checked? We were fighting you to a standstill until we both got stupid and started using planet-killing dust," Jace retorted, pushing himself to his feet. He was unsteady, but he locked his knees, refusing to show weakness. "And, for the record, my levity is a personal failing. My race is just generally disappointing." Reth stared at him. Yellow eyes narrowed. He seemed momentarily thrown off balance by the response. "Silence. Follow me. Try to touch nothing. Your contamination is already a burden." "Right. Lead on, Captain Grumpy." Reth spun, his armor clicking, and marched out of the room. Jace followed him into a corridor that was more like an artery. Same pulsating walls, same biotic light. The floor was soft, giving slightly under his boots, which he was grateful to see they had let him keep. Kareth guards were posted at intervals, their faceless, bone-white forms turning in unison to watch him pass. They were silent, but the hatred was a palpable force in the air. "So," Jace said, just to break the oppressive silence. "Nice ship. Do the walls bleed if I punch them? I'm asking for a friend." Reth didn't stop, but his voice was glacial. "Attempt it, human, and I will personally space what remains of you." Tempting offer. They walked for what felt like miles, through a twisting, organic labyrinth that was clearly designed by something that did not believe in right angles. Finally, Reth stopped before a massive, valved doorway. "The Empress is in the locus," Reth said, his voice low and suddenly, oddly, reverent. "You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not make any sudden movements. You will keep your gaze low. And if you make a single threatening gesture towards her, I will end your genetic line before you can draw your next breath. Am I understood? Crystal, no sudden moves. Look at the floor. Got it. What if I have to sneeze? Is that a genetic line-ending offense? Reth's hand snapped, grabbing the front of Jace's tunic. He slammed Jace against the pulsing wall, which gave off a wet, squelching sound. Reth's face was inches from his, the yellow eyes blazing. This is not a game, Terran, he spat, the word an insult. She is the divine voice. She is Kareth's will. Your life is less dust in her boots, but you are an anomaly. And the Empress suffers anomalies to exist only as long as they are useful. Prove useless, or prove dangerous, and you die. Jace met his gaze, his own humor fading, replaced by the cold, hard steel of a soldier. I stopped playing games a long time ago, Captain. I'm just a guy who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, trying to do one right thing in a life full of wrong ones. Now, are you going to let me go? Or is this close personal threats part of the standard tour? Reth held him for a second longer, searching his face. Then, with a snort of disgust, he released him, shoving him back. The locus is sterile. The air you breathe is a gift. Do not forget it. He turned and placed his palm on the valve. It dilated open, revealing a vast, circular chamber. The room was breathtaking. It was a massive cavern, the walls a deep, living amethyst, and the ceiling was a transparent dome looking out onto the black of space. Stars, cold and indifferent, glittered above. In the center of the room, on a raised, dais-like throne of living, fused bone, sat Empress Kaleth. She was not in her armor. She wore a flowing, dark blue gown that seemed to be made of the same liquid silk as his own clothes. Her raven-black hair was unbound, cascading over her shoulders. She looked less like a warrior queen and more like a priestess. But the power she radiated was undiminished. It was a tangible thing, a pressure in the air. Jace obeyed, just for a moment, and kept his gaze low. He saw the floor. It was a mosaic of living, glowing energy lines, all converging on her throne. He also saw, with a jolt, that he was not the only guest. Two Kareth stood in the chamber, robed in gray, their faces hidden by ceremonial masks of polished wood. They were flanked by 4 royal guards. "Leave us, Captain," Kaleth's voice said. It was soft, but it carried the same absolute authority as her battlefield pronouncement. Reth's head snapped up. Jace could feel the captain's shock. "My Empress, I cannot. The human is unsecured. He is not a threat to me. Reth, he is bound. Now, leave us. You and your guards." Reth's jaw tightened. Jace could practically hear his teeth grinding. But he bowed, a stiff, formal gesture. "As you command, Empress." He shot Jace one last look, a clear promise of murder, and then backed out of the chamber, the other guards following. The valve sealed, leaving Jace alone with the Empress and the 2 masked Kareth. "Approach, Jace Arden," Kaleth said. Jace did, stopping a respectful 10 paces from the dais. He kept his head up this time, meeting her violet gaze. Close up. He could see the impossible perfection of her features, but also the deep, weary intelligence in her eyes. This was not a woman who slept well. "The robed individuals," she said, gesturing to the masked Kareth. "They are my chief bioscientists. They have questions, but I have one first." She rose from the throne, gliding down the steps. She was tall, but without her armor and boots. She was nearly eye to eye with him. "You are a soldier," she stated. "A major of the Terran Alliance. A biowarfare specialist. Your file is extensive. We have known of your work." Jace's blood went cold. "Ex-major. And my work is the reason I was on that ball of dirt. You were exiled for refusing to deploy the very weapon That was killing my Tharoon, she said. Her eyes searched for him. Yet you saved him. You, a human, who should hate him. You, a specialist, who should have known he was a priceless genetic asset to be harvested, not saved. You sacrificed your crew, your freedom, and nearly your life. Why? Jace felt the eyes of the masked scientists on him, cold and analytical. He felt Calith's gaze, which was something else entirely. It was a test. He gave the only answer he had, the same answer he had been giving himself. Because it was dying, he said, his voice quiet. Because it was in pain, and it was terrified, and it was alone. And I was tired of letting things die just because a manifest said they were the enemy. That's it. No grand strategy. No love for your giant, six-legged lizard cat. It was just one living thing, dying in a pit. I didn't think so, I just acted. He shrugged. A small, helpless gesture. It was stupid. I'm a professional idiot. It's in my file. There was a long, heavy silence. The masked Kareth shifted, murmuring to each other in their sibilant, clicking language. Calith did not move. Her violet eyes just watched him. He had the unsettling feeling she was seeing more than his face, that she was seeing the cracks in his soul. Finally, she nodded, a slow, single inclination of her head. Honesty, a rare trait in your species, and in mine. She turned to her scientists. You may proceed. One of the masked figures stepped forward. His voice was a dry, synthesized rasp. The arm. If you please, show us. Jace looked at his right arm. The shimmering, silvery gray pattern pulsed with a faint, cold light, in time with the ship's heartbeat. He held it out. The scientist produced a tool, a glowing, organic-looking scanner, and passed it over Jace's arm, not quite touching the skin. The tool chimed, a series of soft, fluting notes. The ash is stable, the scientist rasped, his voice filled with a disbelieving awe. It has not dissolved the tissue. It has integrated. It's rewritten his epidermis, his nerve endings. It's using his vascular system as a power conduit. What does that mean? Calith asked, her voice sharp. It means, Empress, the second scientist said, that he is a walking impossibility. The bioash is a disassembly plague. Its only directive is to unmake. But this is creation. It has made him more. We are detecting a new, symbiotic bioelectric field, the frequency Empress. It is resonating with the ship's core. Jace looked at his arm, then at the pulsing walls. Is that why I have a headache? Because I'm in tune with your spaceship? The first scientist ignored him, turning to Calith. The pattern. It is not random. It is a map of a network. And the sigil you placed it has locked the bond. It has marked him not just as your property, but as part of the Tharoon's veil. He is, in essence, now neurologically paired to the beast, as you are. Calith's composure finally cracked. A flicker of something passed over her face. Shock. He is bonded like me. A secondary, passive bond. But yes, the Tharoon's life force is linked to yours. And now, it seems, it is also linked to his. This human is an anchor. He may be the only reason that Tharoon is still alive. This was too much. Jace dropped his arm, staggering back a step. Whoa. Hold on. Bonded anchor, I just touched the thing. I'm not part of anything. I'm a prisoner of war, right? Calith's eyes were fixed on his arm. Her expression, a mix of calculation, wonder, and something that looked unsettlingly like hunger. That, she said softly, is no longer clear. She turned away from him, a silent dismissal, and ascended the steps to her throne. Take him to the Tharoon's cradle. I want to see this resonance for myself. My Empress, the first scientist said, bowing. A word of caution. The High Seer, Marith, has learned of the human. She is displeased. Calith sat on the throne, the picture of serene power once more. Marith is always displeased. She finds joy in misery. It is her primary political platform. Let her be displeased. This anomaly is mine, sanctioned by the old law. He touched the dying beast. He saved a royal. He bears my mark. He is protected. She looked at Jace, her gaze pinning him from across the room. For now. The scientist bowed and gestured for Jace to follow. He glanced back at the Empress, but her eyes were closed, her face a mask of imperial calm. Reth Kalen was waiting for them outside, his face a thundercloud. He fell into step beside Jace as the two scientists led the way. So, Reth sneered, his voice a low growl. A guest now. Are we an anchor? You have fooled her with your Terran sentimentality. Yeah, that was the plan, Jace shot back. His nerves frayed. Step 1, get exiled. Step 2, almost get eaten by a dust storm. Step 3, stick my hand in a plague pit and bond with a giant monster. It's a classic Terran gambit. We call it catastrophic stupidity. You should try it. Reth actually faltered, his stride breaking for a half-second. Your species is diseased. You mock things you should fear. I mock things I do fear, Captain, Jace said, his voice dropping. It's a coping mechanism. You guys have what preening looking constipated. Whatever it is you're doing right now. I am showing restraint, Reth hissed. I am restraining myself from snapping your neck for the good of the Empire. See, we're bonding. We are not bonding. Quiet, the lead scientist rasped, without looking back. We are here. They had entered a different, larger chamber. This one even more humid, and smelling strongly of ammonia and salt. The Tharoon's cradle. The beast was magnificent, even in its current state. It was suspended in a massive, amber-colored can of something, a life support gel. Its 30-meter-long body was curled, its 6 legs gently twitching. Its breathing was still shallow, its midnight blue hide still marred by the wounds, though they looked cleaner. Its massive, sapphire eye was closed. It was alive, but barely. Vitals are stable, but low, the scientist murmured. The genetic cascade was halted, but the damage to its core matrix is extensive. It is fading. Calith entered the chamber from another aperture, flanked by 2 more guards. She had changed into a more practical, dark gray uniform, but she was still unarmed. She walked to the side of the massive tank, placing a hand on its pulsating surface. He does not wake, she said, her voice soft, all traces of the Empress gone for a moment. Jace saw the woman, grieving for her companion. Empress, the scientist said. The human. Let us test the theory. Calith looked at Jace. Approach the cradle. Human. Slowly. Jace did, Reth's hand hovering near his biorifle the entire time. Jace walked up to the tank, standing beside his Empress. He was so close he could smell her. A faint, clean scent like ozone and, oddly, like flowers after a rain. What am I supposed to do? Jace asked. Place your hand on the Ken, the scientist commanded. The marked one. Jace hesitated. He looked at Calith. She nodded. He took a breath. He raised his right arm, the silvery gray pattern seeming to brighten in the dim light of the chamber. He pressed his palm against the warm, yielding surface of the Ken. The effect was instantaneous. Tharoon's eyes snapped open. A massive, sapphire blue orb. It is fixed directly on Jace. The beast's vitals, displayed on a glowing biopanel, spiked, stabilizing. Biological regeneration initiated, neural link strengthening. The ash on Jace's arm flared, not with cold light, but with a sudden, pulsing warmth. A jolt went through him. Not painful this time, but strong, like a massive silent bell being struck. He felt a presence, not the cold, vast ocean of the ash, but something else, something singular, animalistic, intelligent, and grateful. The Tharoon let out a low, vibrating purr that shook the entire chamber. It pushed its massive head against the inside of the ken, as close to Jace's hand as it could get. Jace was speechless. He was connected to this thing. He could feel it. Its pain, its loyalty, its bone-deep exhaustion, and its profound, ancient bond with the woman standing next to him. He looked at Kalith. She was staring at her beast, her hand covering her mouth, her violet eyes wide and shining with unshed tears. The first time, she looked vulnerable. "It knows you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It knows this," Jace said, looking at his glowing arm. "I'm just the guy it's attached to." The news of the miracle spread through the dreadnought like a fever. Jace was no longer a prisoner. He was the ash-marked, the beast healer, the human anomaly. It made walking down the artery corridors even more of a trial. The guards still hated him. But now, their hatred was mixed with a superstitious awe, which Jace decided was even creepier. Reth Kalen's personal hell tour guide routine only intensified. "The Empress has confined you to this wing. Do not leave it. The science wing is forbidden. The command locus is forbidden. The mess hall as well. You would not like our food." "As long as it's not the gray paste they served us on Kaldis. I'm willing to try," Jace said, sitting on his platform bed. His new quarters were slightly nicer. They had a viewport. "It is a live, nutrient-rich protein grub," Reth said, enjoying this. "Right. Gray paste it is. Did you bring me any?" "The Empress has ordered Terran rations. Synthetics. They are being replicated. It is disgusting." Reth looked offended at the very concept. "My heart bleeds for you, Captain. Now, is there a point to this visit, or do you just miss my shining, sarcastic face?" Reth's face darkened. "The High Seer, Mareth, has formally petitioned the Council. She has declared you a biogenic curse, an unholy contamination. She is demanding your purification, which, I am told, involves a biofurnace." Jace's stomach tightened, but he kept his voice light. "A furnace kinky. But I'm going to have to pass. Tell her I'm washing my hair." "This is not a joke. Human," Reth snapped. "Mareth holds sway over the old traditions. The only reason you are not already ash is because the Empress invoked the Savior's claim. It is an ancient law, archaic. It states that anyone, of any species, who saves a royal beast in its dying hour becomes the property of the beast's master. You are no prisoner, Jace Arden. You are, by our most ancient law, her slave." Jace went very still. The humor fled, leaving only a bone-chilling cold. "What? You belong to her, to do with as she wishes, to keep, study, or dispose. And the Empress is a pragmatist. If the Council, swayed by Mareth, demands your life in exchange for political stability, she may just grant it." Reth looked for a moment, almost satisfied. "Sleep well, human." Reth spun and left, the aperture sealing behind him. Jace was alone in the pulsing, quiet room, the stars staring in at him through the viewport. Property. A slave. He had traded one prison for another, far more gilded, far more dangerous. He spent the next days in a haze. He was taken to the Tharoon's cradle 3 times a day. He would place his hand on the ken, the beast would purr, and its vitals would improve. The wounds were closing. The light in its eye was brighter. It was, undeniably, healing. And in those long, quiet sessions, Kalith was often there. She would stand on the other side of the tank, and they would talk. It started as an interrogation. She wanted to know everything about Terran Ash warfare, about Hale, about his insubordination. He told her. He told her about the order to gas Xylos. He told her about the screams over the comms. He told her about years of rot in Caldus. She, in turn, told him not much, at first. But the more he talked, the more he was just blunt, honest, and stripped of all pretense, the more she seemed to unbend. "You believe in saving lives," she said one night as the ship's internal light dimmed. "Even in war, it is a childish notion." "It's a stupid notion," Jace corrected, his hand on the Ken, the Tharoon's purr a low rumble in his bones. "It's inefficient, it's impractical, and it's gotten me disowned, exiled, and enslaved by an alien Empress. So, yeah, stupid. But that's all I've got." "We are Kareth," she said, her voice distant, her eyes on the starfield. "We believe in strength, in the blood debt. You kill one of mine, I kill two of yours. That is the old way. It is Mareth's way." "How's that working out for you?" Jace asked. "Seems like all you've got is a galaxy full of ash and a lot of dead. Maybe it's time for a new way." She turned, her violet eyes flashing. "What would you know of my way? You are a child race. You build with dead metal and wires. You fear what gives you life. You are simple. We're simple." "Yeah," Jace agreed, his voice soft. "We're simple enough to see a creature in pain and want to help it. You're so complex that you need a high seer to tell you it's better to burn it, and me just to keep things pure. You're right. I am simple. Thank the gods." He had gone too far. He saw it in the sudden tensing of her shoulders, the cold fury that replaced the vulnerability in her eyes. "You forget your place, human." "I know my place," Jace said, tiredly, pulling his hand from the Ken. The Tharoon let out a low, unhappy whine. "I'm the property, the ash-marked pet. But even pets are allowed to bark when their master is about to walk off a cliff." He turned and walked out of the cradle, leaving her alone in the dark. He expected Reth to come, to drag him to the biofurnace. He expected to be spaced. Instead, nothing happened. All day he was left alone. No food, no visits, just pulsating walls and stars. On the second day, the aperture to his room dilated. It was Kalith. She was alone. No guards, no scientists. She was in her simple, dark gray uniform. She looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes. She did not look like an Empress. She looked like a woman carrying the weight of a dying star. "The council met," she said, her voice flat. Mareth was persuasive. She spoke of purity, of the ancient blood, of the Terran taint. "And," Jace asked, his heart hammering, "she demanded your execution, as a sacrifice, to cleanse the Tharoon's veil." "And you, being a pragmatist, agreed." Jace sat on his platform, a bitter, hollow feeling in his gut. "No," Kalith said. Jace looked up. "No, no." She walked further into the room, stopping a few feet from him. "I did not agree. I did something else. Something childish." "What did you do?" "I told her, and the entire council, that you were not a taint, that you were a cure. I told them that the ash, our own weapon, was evolving, and that you were the key. I told them that Mareth's purity was just a mask for her fear. Fear of change, fear of the future, fear of me." Jace stared at her. "Did you defend me? You, the Empress, defended the human slave?" "Why?" Kalith came closer. Close enough for him to see the flecks of silver in her violet eyes. Close enough for him to feel the warmth radiating from her. "Because you are not a pet, Jace Arden," she whispered, her voice for him alone. "And you are not a slave. You are an inconvenience. A loud, sarcastic, and infuriatingly honest inconvenience. And because when I stand next to you, my Tharoon is not the only one who feels anchored. He saw it then. Behind the Empress, behind the duty, behind the millennia of tradition, he saw a woman, a lonely, brilliant, terrified woman, trapped in a role she hadn't chosen, just as he was. And she saw him, not the disgraced major, not the ash-marked, just Jace, a man who was tired of letting things die. The pull was magnetic, inevitable. He didn't know who moved first. It didn't matter. But one moment, they were standing apart, and the next, her hands were on his chest, and his were on her waist, and the galaxy outside the viewport just disappeared. It was not a kiss of passion, not yet. It was a kiss of recognition. A desperate, fumbling, and profoundly simple statement. You are not alone. The moment was broken by the sound of the ship's internal chime, a low, resonant bell. Kalith pulled back, her eyes wide, her cheeks flushed. The mask was back, but it was cracked. "The Council," she said, her voice breathless, formal. "They have reconvened." She straightened her uniform, her face becoming the Imperial mask once more. She turned to leave. "Kalith," Jace said. He didn't know why he used her name. She paused at the aperture. "Yes. You said you told them I was a cure, a key. What does that mean for me?" She looked at him over her shoulder, and for a second, a small, dangerous smile played on her lips. "It means, Jace Arden, that you are no longer a prisoner or a slave. You are, as of this moment, my official Bioash advisor. You will accompany the Tharoon, always, whether Mareth likes it or not." Aperture sealed, leaving Jace alone. "Bioash advisor," he said to the empty, pulsing room. A slow grin spread across his face. "Well, it's a step up from janitor." The dreadnought Velkareth did not drop out of warp. It exhaled. There was a long, slow, dimensional shudder that Jace felt in his bones. A feeling like his stomach had been turned inside out and then gently tucked back in. The blackness of interstellar void was replaced by a swirling, planetary-scale masterpiece of life. They had arrived at Kairos, the Kareth capital. Jace stood at the viewport in his advisor quarters, which were just his old quarters with a new, unlocked food dispenser, and stared. He had seen bioformed ships, but this was a bioformed world. The planet was a single, sprawling, interconnected life form. There were no distinct continents, only massive, continent-sized structures of living architecture that looked like coral reefs and cathedral spines fused together. Great, pulsing arteries of bioluminescent fluid, miles wide, flowed across the surface instead of rivers, circulating nutrients. The cities were not built on the planet. They were the planet, rising in pearlescent, spiraling towers that seemed to breathe. The atmosphere was a hazy, healthy-looking lavender. "Well," Jace muttered to the empty room, his hand instinctively going to his marked arm. "The entire planet seems to have a severe case of everything. Who's the gastroenterologist on call for the world?" His arm tingled. The silvery gray ash pattern felt warm. The buzzing in his head, the one he had lived with for years, was different here. On Kaldis, it had been a shriek of pain. On the Velkareth, it had been a steady, rhythmic thrum. Here it was a choir, a billion voices all singing in a biological harmony he could just barely perceive. It was overwhelming and beautiful. A sharp chime at his aperture interrupted his medical diagnosis. The aperture dilated, revealing Captain Reth Kalin. His face, as always, looked like he was suffering from a particularly sour piece of fruit. "The Empress commands your presence, advisor," Reth said, emphasizing the title with a metric ton of sarcasm. "You are to be presented. Try not to embarrass her." "Embarrass her," Jace said. brushing a non-existent piece of lint from his new Kareth-issue gray tunic. It was a hell of a lot more comfortable than his hazmat suit. Reth, I'm the pinnacle of interspecies diplomacy. My charm is legendary. Your charm is a tactical liability, Reth snapped. You are to be presented to the Kareth High Council in the Grand Synod. It is the most sacred thing you would not understand. Sacred. Got it. I'll be sure to wear my most sacred face. Is it this one? Jace adopted a look of pious, wide-eyed constipation. Reth actually closed his eyes for a full 2 seconds. Just follow me. And for the love of the first spore, do not speak unless the Empress gives you leave. The shuttle that took them from the orbiting dreadnought to the planet's surface was, of course, a living creature. It was a manta ray-shaped thing that detached from the Velkareth's underbelly, wrapped them in a warm, moist ken, and swam through the atmosphere. The landing was less a landing and more of a docking. It nuzzled into a massive, flower-like aperture on one of the tallest spires, which closed around them with a soft, pneumatic sigh. Impressive, Jace murmured, as they were disgorged into a vast, humid chamber. Your entire civilization is sticky. Reth just growled and pushed him forward. The Grand Synod was a place of impossible scale. Jace felt like a bacterium in a whale's heart. The chamber was a massive, vaulted dome, the walls a living, translucent white, shot through with veins of gold light. In the center, 100-foot-tall column of something, a massive, ancient, tree-like structure, pulsed with a slow, powerful life. Around it, in concentric, terraced rings, sat the council. There were hundreds of them. Kareth, all informal, ceremonial robes of different colors, their faces impassive. And in the very center, on a raised throne of fused, living wood that grew from the central pillar, sat Empress Kaleth. She looked every inch the divine ruler, her black armor replaced by intricate, layered black and violet robes, a crown of living, shimmering obsidian crystal resting on her brow. Stick to the protocol, advisor, Reth whispered, his voice vibrating with a mixture of awe and menace. Or I will make you. Jace was announced by a Kareth herald, his voice a series of melodic, clicking sounds that Jace was pretty sure translated to the unclean, annoying human. He was escorted to the center of the floor, directly below Kaleth's throne, and left, alone, in a circle of light. He could feel the weight of hundreds of alien eyes. The silence was absolute, broken only by the slow thump-thump of the great pillar tree. A new figure rose from the terraces. She was old, her skin a pale, papery gray, but her posture was as straight as a steel rod. She wore robes of stark, white gray, the color of dead ash. Her face was a web of fine wrinkles, but her eyes were a burning, fanatic blue. This had to be Merith. So, the High Seer's voice boomed, amplified by the chamber's acoustics. It was a powerful, commanding voice, belying her frail appearance. This is the thing our Empress has brought into the sacred heart of Kairos. She glided down the steps, her gaze fixed on Jace. A Terran, a male, a soldier from the race that builds with dead metal and poisoned our worlds. She stopped just outside Jace's circle of light. She calls him advisor. I call him contamination. She calls him anchor. I call him curse. Merith raised one, long, bony finger and pointed directly at Jace's right arm, which he had kept at his side. Look, he bears the plague mark, the gray rot that devours us. He wears it as a bauble, and our Empress, claims he saved her beast, when it is clear he has merely infected it with his own human filth. A murmur of agreement, an angry, sibilant hiss, rose from much of the council. Jace fought every instinct to reply with a cutting. Take one to no one, Grandma. He kept his eyes forward, his face neutral. He looked at Kaleth. Her expression was stone. High Seer Merith. Calith's voice cut through the murmur, instantly silencing it. Your concern for the purity of our world is noted, as it is every time we convene. There was a razor's edge in her tone. But you speak from tradition, not from data. The human, Jace Arden, is an anomaly, but he is not the only anomaly. She gestured to Jace. Jace Arden, you are a specialist in this field. You will address the council, not with charm, but in fact, this was it. Jace took a slow breath. He was no politician. He was a soldier and a scientist. So, he would be a scientist. Honored Council, he began, his voice clear and steady, echoing in the vast chamber. He met Merith's burning gaze. I am Jace Arden, and yes, I am a human. I am also, as the High Seer noted, a soldier. I specialized in nanite-based bioweapons, specifically the one you call bioash. He raised his right arm. The silvery gray pattern pulsed gently, in time with the great tree. The High Seer calls this a contamination, a curse. From a traditional standpoint, she is not wrong. The ash is a weapon. It was designed to disassemble, consumed. But biology is all about adaptation. The ash is no different. He pointed to Merith. The High Seer advocates for purification. For if I understood the reports correctly, a biofurnace. Fire. A primitive, brute force solution. But you cannot burn a nanite. You cannot burn an idea. He looked around at the council, trying to find logical eyes. The ash on my arm did not consume me. Why, my own government does not know. They declared me neurologically unstable and threw me away. But I am a specialist, and I have a hypothesis. He turned back to Merith. You call it a taint. I call it symbiosis. Ash, for reasons I do not yet understand, found my biology compatible. It did not find a target to destroy. It found a host to integrate. It did not make me less. It made me something else. Heresy, Merith hissed. Symbiosis with the rot. It is heresy, Jace agreed, his voice hardening. It's heresy to believe that something new can come from something old. It's heresy to believe that a weapon can be unmade. But here I am, living proof. He pointed to the central pillar. Your world, your entire civilization is biological. It lives. It breathes. It is the greatest biological achievement in the known galaxy. And you, he looked at Merith, want to fight a biological problem with fire? You do not need a priest, High Seer. You need a better doctor. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. He had not insulted her. He had, in the most technical, scientific way possible, called her incompetent. Several of the robed council members, the ones in scientist purple, were leaning forward, murmuring to each other, their expressions no longer hostile, but intrigued. Jace had one last shot. The Empress's Tharun was dying. I put my contaminated hand to it, and it lived. My curse is the reason your Empress's most sacred bond is not broken. You can believe in your traditions. You can believe in purification by fire, or you can believe the data. Tharun is alive. I am alive. We are evolving. The question is, will you evolve with us? He finished, his heart hammering. He had said his piece. He had either just saved his own life, or put a very final, very stupid-sounding period on the end of it. Merith's face was a mask of incandescent fury. She looked like she was about to call for his head on a spike. But Calith was faster. Thank you, advisor, she said, her voice cool and controlled. Your medical opinion is noted. She rose from her throne. The council will consider the matter of the Terran anomaly. He remains under my personal protection, as is my right by the Savior's claim. This session is concluded. She swept from the chamber, not looking back. Jace was left standing in the center, as Reth Kalen and two guards materialized at his side. "You are," Reth growled, grabbing his arm. "An absolute, suicidal madman." "But I'm alive, am I not?" Jace said, feeling a dizzying rush of adrenaline. "For now," Reth snarled, dragging him out of the synod. "For now." The next few days were a blur of advisory duties, which mostly meant being poked and prodded by Kaleth's bioscientists in a lab that looked like a high-tech greenhouse. The two masked Kareth, whom Jace had privately nicknamed Gloom, and Doom, were fascinated by his arm. "The resonance is increasing," Gloom rasped, passing a scanner over the ash pattern. "It is listening." "Listening to what?" Jace asked, wincing as the scanner sent a weird, tingling jolt up his arm. "To the city," Doom murmured. "To Kairos. The whole planet is a bioelectric field. Human. A great song. And your arm is a receiver, tuned to a very specific, very dark frequency." "You mean the ash," Jace said, his blood running a little cold. "Precisely. The weapon your people unleashed did not just kill humans. It was infected. It left scars. Pockets of dormant malignancy, deep in the planet's biostructure, a chronic illness. It was during one of these sessions that Jace felt it. He was linked to the machines, his arm glowing as they calibrated their sensors. He had his eyes closed, bored, when he heard it. It was not a sound. It was a feeling, a spike of pure, unadulterated agony that shot through his head, originating from his arm. He gasped, lurching forward. "Did you feel that?" "Feel what?" Gloom asked, looking up from his console. "All readings are stable." "No, it's not," Jace concentrated, focusing past the lab, past the ship. He listened, with his arm, and he heard it. A low, constant, agonizing moan. It was like the choir he'd heard on arrival, but horribly off-key, a note of profound illness. "The city," he whispered. "It's in pain. Something is wrong." He ripped his arm from the diagnostic machine, ignoring the scientists' protests, and all but ran from the lab. He knew, instinctively, where he needed to go. He found Kaleth in the Tharun's habitat. The beast was no longer in the ken. It was in a vast, open-air chamber that simulated a Kareth forest, all glowing, purple flora. The Tharun, its wounds now just faint, silvery scars, was playing. It was batting a massive, fibrous ball around the enclosure. It saw Jace and let out a rumbling, happy bellow. It trotted over to him, all 30 meters, and Jace guessed 200 tons of it, and gently butted its massive head against Jace's chest, nearly sending him flying. "Whoa, easy. Big fella," Jace laughed, bracing himself and scratching the beast behind a dinner plate-sized ear ridge. The Tharun purred, the sound vibrating in Jace's bones. Kaleth was standing nearby, a faint, small smile on her face. "He has taken to you. His recovery is astounding. Our biologists say he is healing at a rate 10 times faster than predicted." "He just needed a little unclean human charm," Jace said, still petting the giant creature. The Tharun then did something unexpected. It turned its massive head, gave Kaleth a cursory sniff, and then turned back to Jace, pushing its head against his arm, demanding more scratches. Jace froze. He looked at Kaleth. Her smile was gone. It was replaced by an expression of profound, complex something. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. Not exactly. It was displacement. Like she had just seen her oldest, most loyal friend greet a stranger with more enthusiasm. "He seems to prefer you," Kaleth said, her voice perfectly neutral, which was more alarming than anger. "No, he's just," Jace scrambled. "He's just, grateful. For the non-dying thing. Right, Tharun." The beast purred louder, its massive blue eye fixed on Jace with pure, animal adoration. "I'm sure," Calith said, her voice still flat. "Look, Calith," Jace said, stepping away from the beast, which whined in protest. "We have a problem. A real one. Kairos. The city it's sick." He told her what he'd felt. The wave of pain. The constant, underlying moan of a planet-wide illness. "The bio-ash," he said, his voice low. "It's still here. It's dormant. But it's eating your world from the inside out." That night, she came to his quarters. It was late. The ship's internal lights were dimmed to a soft, starlit glow. He was on his balcony, a small, living shelf that jutted out from the spire, looking down at the glowing, pulsing cityscape. "You were right," her voice said from the darkness behind him. He turned. She was standing in the aperture, not as an empress, but as a woman. She was in a simple, dark robe, her hair unbound. "I had my scientists run a deep scan, using the frequencies you isolated," she said, walking to stand beside him. The air was warm and smelled like jasmine. "The planet's core biomass is compromised. There are lesions, thousands of them. Dormant pockets of active, weaponized ash. Merith, the Council, they have been suppressing these reports for years." "They knew," Jace was stunned. "They knew the planet was dying and they just ignored it." "They called it the Great Scourge. A holy trial," Calith said, her voice bitter. She leaned against the balcony, her small, white hands gripping the living wood railing. "Merith's solution was prayer, sacrifice, that it would burn itself out. But it's not. It's festering." They stood in silence for a long time, the wounded, glowing city breathing beneath them. "You were a tool," Jace said quietly. She turned, her violet eyes searching for him. "What? Hail my admiral. He used me. He used my whole unit. We were just cogs in his machine. Sacrificial, expendable, all to protect his career, his vision. The Council." Jace gestured to the city. "They're doing the same to you. You're not an empress. You're a figurehead. A tool to keep the holy trial going while they ignore the cancer eating the patient." A single tear ran down her pale cheek. She did not wipe it away. "Since I was spawned," she whispered, her voice thick, "I was told what I was. I am the vessel. I am the will of Kairos. I'm an empress. The woman Calith was never allowed to exist. Until Tharoon, my only true friend, was dying." She looked at him, her gaze raw and vulnerable, and a sarcastic, "Impossible." Simple human showed me what it was to act, to choose. Not as a tool, but as a person. The space between them was electric. It was more than the kiss. This was deeper. This was two broken, lonely people, trapped by systems they hated, seeing each other. Really seeing each other. "You're not a tool, Calith," Jace said, his voice rough. He reached out, his hand hovering, uncertain. He did not touch her face. Instead, he touched her hand, the one gripping the railing. His marked, ash-gray fingers covered her pale ones. There was a jolt, a spark of warmth. The ash on his arm glowed, a soft, silver light. And she didn't pull away. She turned her hand, lacing her fingers with his. "Neither are you, Jace Arden," she whispered. But their fragile peace was not to last. Merith was not a woman who took scientific humiliation well. The rumors started small, whispers in the lower, darker, older parts of the city. Reth reported them to Calith, his face a mask of grim duty, pointedly ignoring Jace's presence in the Empress's strategy room. "They are saying," Reth said, his voice stiff, "that the Tharoon is unclean, tainted by the Terran's touch, that its miraculous recovery is a lie, a dark magic symbiosis, that the beast is now a vessel for the rot. She's blaming me for the sickness she ignored, Jace spat, pacing the chamber. It gets worse, Empress, Reth continued, his jaw tight. Marith has begun preaching a purification by ash fire. She is telling the zealots, the children of the first spore, that the Tharun and its handler must be cleansed, for the good of Kairos. A cult, Jace said. Fantastic. She's starting a damn holy war. It is a significant political move, Kalith said, her face pale, her hands steepled. She was the Empress again. She is using their fear of the sickness I just revealed and aiming it at you. Then came the explosions. They were not bombs. Jace was with Reth, inspecting a water reclamation conduit, part of his new advisory role, when the first one happened. A section of the living, artery-like wall, 50 yards away, just convulsed. It turned a sick, blackish gray, swelled rapidly, and then burst. It was not a fire and shrapnel explosion. It was a wet, horrific detonation of plague and poison tissue. A cloud of something vaporized, active bioash, sprayed over the area. Jace reacted instantly, tackling Reth behind a living support column. Masks now, he yelled, fumbling for the emergency rebreather on his belt. Reth, to his credit, was just as fast. They sealed their masks as the mist settled, eating at the living architecture, making it sizzle and melt like wax. What in the void was that? Reth choked, his eyes wide with horror. Jace crept out from behind the column. His arm was screaming. The ash pattern was burning hot, the buzz in his head a piercing shriek. He walked toward the epicenter of the blast, his handheld scanner a gift from Gloom and Doom working overtime. He knelt by the epicenter, a crater of liquefied, bubbling biomass. It's the ash, he said, his voice grim. But it's different. It's edited. Edited. The original ash stuff on my arm. It's a broad-spectrum disassembler. This, Jace pointed to his scanner, which was flashing a critical warning red. This is different. It's been focused. It's not designed to eat a planet. It's designed to eat a person, or a wall. It's a biological-shaped charge, a tissue nuke. He stood up, his mind reeling. This is military grade, but it's not my military. The base code, it's Kareth. Marith, Reth whispered, his voice holding, for the first time, a note of genuine fear. It has to be, as if on cue, Jace's old Terran biomonitor, a relic he wore on his wrist under his tunic, which the Kareth had dismissed as primitive, suddenly vibrated. It had been dead 2 years. He ducked into an alcove, pulling up his sleeve. A single line of text was scrolling across the tiny, cracked screen. A one-time, encrypted, tight-beam transmission. Encryption, Solon Metero 1. Jace, you are alive. Thank God. The text paused, then scrolled. They know. Hale knows. He is not happy. Be careful. Jace. The ash. I dug. It is not ours. Not originally. The base code, it is ancient. Predates both races. I think it was a control mechanism. For another pause. Jace. Your genome. The one that made you unstable. The marker Hale buried. It matches. A near 100% match to the ash origin code. And Jace. It also matches a recovered gene fragment from the Kareth royal line. It is a shared ancestor. A key. You are a key. Jace. And I think you are the only one. Watch your back. Hale is the message ended. The screen went dark, dead again. Jace's blood felt like ice. A shared ancestor. A key. He wasn't just compatible. He was meant to be. He found Kalith in her private chambers, her face a mask of cold fury as she listened to the reports of 3 other, identical tissue nuke explosions across the city. The death toll was low, only 12, but the panic was high. Marith's cult was already on the streets, proclaiming it The coming of the ash fire. A cleansing of the rot. Jace waited for the guards to leave. He stood before her, the dead biomonitor heavy on his wrist. "It's her," Jace said. "She's not just ignoring the sickness. Kalith. She's weaponizing it. She's using the dormant ash, editing it, and staging these attacks to scare the populace into demanding my head." "I know," Kalith said, her voice a low, dangerous growl. "She is forcing my hand." "So, force it back," Jace said, his own anger rising. "Arrest her. Put her on trial. Show the council the data." "And what data do I show them?" Kalith snapped, rising from her chair. "Does my human advisor think she is guilty that he feels it in his magic ash arm? I have no proof. Just more anomalies. If I move against a high seer, the high seer on your word alone, I will not be an empress. I will be a traitor. Marith will declare me human-tainted, and the council, the cowards, will side with her to prevent a civil war. I will be deposed, and you will be the first one she purifies in the bio-furnace. Followed, I imagine, by me." She was trapped. He saw it. He was her love. He realized, with a jolt, he was the man she was feeling for. And he was also the anchor that was going to drown her. He stepped toward her, his mind racing, holding out the dead biomonitor. "Not just my word. My people are scientists, and she just contacted me. Kalith. It's bigger than you, me, or Marith. The ash, it's ours. Both of our races. From a long time ago, I am a key." That's what she said. Kalith stared at the primitive Terrantech, then at his face, her own expression an agony of indecision. "A key," she whispered. She was caught. If she trusted him, if she believed this data, she would be risking a schism that would tear her empire in two. If she sacrificed him, she would appease Marith, stabilize her throne, and lose the only person in the galaxy who saw her, and, she was beginning to realize, the only person she had ever loved. "What do we do, Jace?" she whispered, the Empress vanishing, the terrified woman returning. "What do I choose?" He had no answer for her. The choice was hers. And the city outside, their city, moaned in its sickness, waiting. The Grand Synod was suffocating. Jace stood in his designated spot, a small, shadowed alcove 100 feet from the base of the great pillar tree. He was, as per Kalith's suggestion, dressed in formal, dark gray Kareth robes that felt suspiciously like a high-end funeral shroud. He was the bioash advisor, on display, but not part of the display. And he could feel the collective weight of 500 pairs of alien eyes drilling into him. "This is," Jace muttered under his breath, to the bone-white royal guard standing, by necessity, 6 feet away from him. "This is a lot of pomp for a sick lizard." The guard, whose name Jace had decided was Stony, did not react. He just stood. "Seriously," Jace tried again. "You guys don't have, like, a memo, a simple, 'He's fine, stop praying' email. This whole thing seems inefficient." Stony remained silent. Jace sighed. The ceremony was Kalith's grand political maneuver. In the 2 days since the tissue nuke attacks, the city had been on a knife edge of panic. Marith's cult, the children of the first spore, had been preaching on every bioform street corner, their voices full of fire and purification. They were calling for the ash-marked human and the tainted Empress to be brought to trial. Kalith's response was not to hide. It was to double down. She had summoned the entire High Council, the regional biolords, and the heads of the major guilds for an emergency conclave of healing. The centerpiece, the formal, public declaration of the Tharoon's complete and total recovery. It was a power play, a way of saying, "My beast is whole, my bond is strong, and your high seer is a fear-mongering old fool." Kalith was magnificent. She sat on the high throne, carved from the living, golden-veined wood of the pillar tree, in her full imperial armor. The iridescent black carapace, the same she had worn on Caldus, was polished to a mirror shine. She was not a woman. She was a symbol, radiating an icy, untouchable power. The great chamber was packed. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and the musky, alien perfume of the Kareth elite. The only sound was the low, melodic chanting of the Kareth biopriests, a sound that Jace found deeply unsettling. It was too close to the song his arm was picking up from the city. "We are gathered," Calith's voice boomed, the synod's natural acoustics carrying her voice to every corner. "To bear witness, to see with our own eyes that life, not rot, is Kairos's will. The High Seer Mareth has spoken of a great scourge. She has spoken of a taint." Her violet eyes swept the chamber, and Jace felt a shiver run down his spine. She was good at this. "She is not wrong," Calith continued, and a shocked, sibilant hiss ran through the crowd. "There is a sickness of fear, a sickness of clinging to old, dead traditions when life requires evolution." She rose, spreading her arms. "As your Empress, as the vessel of the veil, I declared my bond beast was dying, and today I declare him healed, on cue." A massive aperture at the side of the chamber dilated open, and the Tharun, in all his 30-meter glory, strode into the Grand Synod. The crowd gasped as one. The beast was perfect. His midnight blue hide was sleek and shining, the silver scars from his wounds barely visible. His biocircuitry glowed with a strong, healthy sapphire light. His massive, intelligent eyes swept the crowd, and he let out a low, rumbling bellow that was not a roar of aggression, but a declaration of presence. He walked to the center of the chamber, directly below Calith, and bowed his massive head. It was a stunning display of power, loyalty, and, Jace knew, a spectacular fuck you to Mareth. Jace allowed himself a small, grim smile. He had spent the last 2 days pumping his own ash-charged energy into the beast, getting him ready for the show. He was proud of the big guy. Calith descended the steps, her hand outstretched to lay on her Tharun's head. "Behold, the bond is strong, the veil is pure, It happened in under a second. The great, vaulted, translucent white walls of the Grand Synod blinked. Jace felt it before he saw it. A piercing, agonizing scream of biofeedback shot up his marked arm and exploded in his skull. It was not the ambient moan of the city. This was a focused, directed attack. "No," he whispered, his eyes wide. The walls turned black, not painted black. A deep, necrotic, rotting black. The golden light veins in the walls turned to a sickly, bubbling gray. "Calith!" Jace roared, shoving Stony aside and bursting from his alcove. The walls cracked. From 100 different fissures, a thick, greasy, black mist shot out. It wasn't the gray, dry ash of Caldus. This was the weaponized, edited, tissue nuke plague. It rained down on the assembled Kareth lords and ladies. The screaming was immediate and terrible. It was not a clean death. The mist touched and dissolved Kareth's skin. Formal robes, living jewelry, and the flesh beneath all turned to a bubbling, black slurry. Figures of grace and power were reduced to melting, writhing puddles of agony on the floor. It was Xylos. Again, it was a nightmare. "The judgment," a voice shrieked, cutting through the horror. Jace's head snapped up. On a high, ceremonial balcony, one reserved for the most ancient seers, stood Mareth. Her arms were raised, her white-gray robes stark against the new, black walls. Her face was a mask of ecstatic, religious fervor. "Behold the ash fire. The great scourge is upon us," she bellowed. "The Empress has brought the taint to the very heart of Kairos. Her bond is false. Her beast is a vessel of rot. She has betrayed the first spore. She has betrayed us all. That's quite a speech, Jace panted, his mind racing, his body moving on pure, adrenaline-fueled instinct. He was fighting his way through the panicking, screaming crowd, his gaze locked on one target, Calith. Children of the spore cleanse the rot, Marith screamed, and in the chamber, Jace saw it happen. Dozens, maybe 100, of the guests weren't guests. They were Marith's cult. They threw off their formal robes, revealing the crude, hardened bioarmor beneath. They drew weapons living, writhing bio-rifles that spat corrosive darts, and swords of sharpened, black bone. For the High Seer for purity, one shouted, and charged the stage, aiming for the Tharoon. The royal guards, Reth Kalin at their head, formed a desperate, bone-white perimeter around the throne. Protect the Empress, formed the shield traitors. Reth's voice was a raw, furious bellow. The chamber descended into a pure, bloody chaos. Cultists versus guards. Panicked. Melting civilians caught in the middle. And the ash. The black, acidic mist was still spraying from the walls. Thickest in the air. A fog of death. Calith was at the base of the throne, her sword a shimmering, crystalline blade in her hand. But she was frozen. Her eyes were wide, staring at her people, her world, dissolving before her. She was not an empress. She was a woman in shock. A new fissure in the wall above her split open, ready to douse her in the plague. Calith, Jace, reached her in a flying, desperate tackle. He hit her hard, his shoulder connecting with her breastplate, sending them both skidding across the slick, polished floor. He heard the hiss as the black mist hit the exact spot she had been standing, dissolving the living wood of the throne's steps. He landed on top of her, his body instinctively covering hers, his arms wrapped around her helmetless head. "Jace," she gasped, her voice small, terrified. "Stay down," he grunted. The black mist was everywhere. It was raining on them. Jace braced for the searing, unimaginable pain of dissolution. He was unarmored. He was going to melt, just like Rook. But the pain was different. It was not the cold, shattering pain of Kaldis. It was on fire, pure, white-hot, agonizing fire. The black mist hit his back, his shoulders, his arms. But it didn't eat him. The silvery gray ash pattern on his right arm exploded. It wasn't just glowing. It was igniting. A blinding, silver-white light blazed from his arm, a miniature sun in the dark, smoky chamber. The ash on his arm was hungry. It was pulling, sucking the black, weaponized ash out of the air. Jace roared, the sound inhuman. The pain was biblical. It felt like his arm was being dipped in lava, like his blood was boiling. The new ash, the black mist, was being drawn into him, into the pattern, which was fighting it, processing it, metabolizing it. His skin was on fire, glowing like a forge-hot coal. "Jace, what? Calith screamed from beneath him. He was in too much pain to answer. His mind was not in his body. The moment the ash pattern ignited, his consciousness had slammed into the Synod's bio-network. It was like being plugged into a god's terminal. He was not just in the room. He was in the room. He could see everything, not with his eyes, but with his new, burning senses. He could see the living biocircuitry in the walls, now corrupted and black. He could see the control nodes, the tissue nukes Marith had planted that were spewing the poison. And he could see Marith. She was still on her balcony. But she was not just speech-making. Her hands were on a glowing, black, organic console. She was Jace's mind, part human, part ash, supplying the words she was quantifying. She was actively directing the flow, like a conductor leading a symphony of murder. She was routing the ash flow, bypassing her own cultists, and focusing it on the royal guards and the council members loyal to Calith. It was a system, a network, and Jace Arden, ex-major, Terran biospecialist, and lifelong stubborn fixer, saw the flaw in the code. He saw the bug. "You want to play God," Jace growled, his voice a burning rasp, his body still shielding Calith. "You're not qualified," with a cry of pure, concentrated, human spite. Jace pushed. He didn't know how. It was instinct. It was the same way he knew how to reroute a failing plasma conduit. The same way he knew how to debug a failing nanite swarm AI. He saw the network. He saw her control. And he hijacked it. He plunged his own, burning consciousness into the network. He found the corrupted data stream that Marith was using. He found his own signature, the key, the admin password that Mira had told him about. And he slammed his metaphorical fist on the enter key. Access granted. Marith's console, on the balcony, sputtered. The High Seer looked down at it, her ecstatic expression turning to one of confusion. "What?" she murmured. "No, no." The black mist stopped. For one heart-stopping second, the entire chamber went silent, save for the screams and the sounds of battle. The spray from the walls died, and then, all at once, the flow reversed. New directive cleanup. Route all to source. Jace, on the floor, his arm a blazing torch, pushed. He pushed ash away from civilians. He pushed it away from Reth and his beleaguered guards. He pushed it back. The tissue nukes, the control nodes Marith had planted, were designed to spew out. They were not designed to take in. "Jace," Reth roared, his bio-rifle smoking. He had just blasted a cultist. "What is this sorcery?" "It's pest control," Jace roared back. All over the room, walls began to convulse. The cultists, whose bioweapons were, Jace now realized, linked to the same network they stopped. They looked down at their own living rifles, which were starting to swell and turn black. "Oh shit," Jace managed. A cultist's rifle exploded, not with a shot, but with a wet, contained pop, spraying him with his own concentrated plague. He dissolved in a heartbeat, then another, and another, all across the room. Marith's network, force-fed its own poison by Jace, was self-destructing. And just as the tide was turning, a new sound entered the fray. A sound of 1,000 tons of pure, biological fury. A sound of crashing stone, and a bellow that shook the very foundations of the Synod. The Tharun had been patient. It had been confusing. It had been attacked. And it had felt, through its dual bond, the agony of Jace and the terror of Calith. The great beast leapt. It didn't charge. It leapt across the chamber, its 30-meter-long body a perfect, blue-black arc of death. It landed directly in the center of the largest group of cultists, crushing a dozen of them instantly. But it was moving through the ash. Remaining black haze was still in the air. "Tharun! No!" Calith screamed. But the beast wasn't melting. Jace, his mind still connected, saw it. The Tharun's biofield was shielded. The passive, healing bond Jace had established with his own ash key signature was now acting as a firewall. The beast was, for all intents and purposes, immune. "Go get him, big guy," Jace gasped, his strength fading. The Tharun went. It was a hurricane of claws, teeth, and righteous, six-legged fury. It was a royal war beast, in its element, defending its masters. Reth and his guards, their morale suddenly, massively boosted by the presence of a giant, invulnerable monster on their side, rallied. To the beast, to the Empress, kill the traitors. The battle was short. A cultist, no matter how zealous, stood no chance against a royal guard and a 200-ton death lizard. On the balcony, Marith saw her coup, her holy judgment, her entire political future, dissolve into a bloody, monster-chewed mess. Her face, once ecstatic, was now a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. She looked down, not at the battle, but at the source, at the glowing, human-shaped beacon on the floor. Her eyes met Jace's. "This is not overhuman," she shrieked, and with a swirl of her white-gray robes, she turned and disappeared into a hidden aperture in the wall. She had run. The chamber fell silent. The last cultist was disarmed. The mist was gone, absorbed back into the self-destructing nodes. The only sounds were the groans of the wounded, the heavy, panting breaths of the Tharoon, and the sizzle. The black, necrotic rot on the walls was receding. The silver-white light from Jace's arm was now pulsing in time with the great pillar tree. And wherever that light touched, the black fled. The walls were returning to their normal, pearlescent white. The golden veins were reigniting. Jace was healing the room. His strength was gone. The fire in his arm subsided, the light dimming. The pain, oh, gods. The pain rushed back in. He collapsed, his dead weight falling fully onto Kalith. Jace, her voice was frantic. He rolled off her, groaning. He was lying on his back, staring up at the newly healed, domed ceiling. "Well," he rasped, his throat raw. "That went well. Right, I think we got most of them." He looked at his arm. The silvery gray pattern was different. It was brighter, deeper, and burned into the center of the pattern, directly over his main artery. In a shimmering, permanent, obsidian black was the sigil of the Kareth royal crown. He stared at it. "Kalith, your logo is on my arm." Kalith was kneeling over him, her face pale, streaked with soot and someone else's blood. Her own hands were shaking so badly she could barely keep them steady. I, she stammered. She looked at his arm, at the new mark. "I think I did that." "You did?" "When you were on fire, she touched her own chest. "I felt the bond. I felt you. I was terrified. I think I pushed myself into you, to anchor you. Do not burn out. You branded me." Jace managed a weak, pained laugh. "In a panic? I think yes," she said. Her imperial composure utterly shattered. She was just Kalith, a terrified, shaking woman. Reth Kalin approached, his armor spattered with black ichor. "My Empress, you are unharmed." He looked at Jace, his expression. Jace had no idea what that expression was. It was not hatred. It was awesome. "And advisor, you are not dead." "High praise, Captain." Jace grunted, trying to sit up. The world spun. "Easy," Kalith commanded, her hands instantly on Jace's shoulders, pushing him gently back down. "Do not move." "My Empress," Reth said, his voice urgent. "Mareth has escaped. The city, the council." "The city is stable," Kalith said, her voice shaking. But the steel was returning. "The Synod is clean. Mareth is a traitor. She will be hunted." She looked down at Jace, her violet eyes locking with his. "Secure the chamber, Captain. Get the doctors. Help the wounded. Get everyone out. Now." The Empress needs a moment. With her advisor. Reth hesitated for one, single, insubordinate second. He looked at the Empress, kneeling in the filth. He looked at the human, who was glowing. He bowed. A deep, real bow. "At once, my Empress." He turned and began bellowing orders. The guards, the unmelted council members, the priests, they were herded out. The Tharoon, with a low, sad whine, was gently prodded back toward its habitat. In a few chaotic minutes, they were alone. Just Jace and Kalith, in the center of the vast, damaged, but healing synod. The silence was profound. Kalith just knelt there, next to him, her hands hovering, her whole body shaking. "Jace," she whispered, Your back, your robes, they're melted." "I'm guessing," Jace said. "I figured." "You shielded me," she said, her voice breaking. "You saved me. You saved all of us. You. Stop saying you, Jace rasped. My ego can't take it. He managed to push himself up onto one elbow, his non-branded one. The pain was a lot. Are you okay? Kalith looked at him, and she laughed. It was no Empress's laugh. It was a broken, hysterical, relieved sound. Am I okay? She touched her face, her hands coming away bloody from a scratch she hadn't known she had. I have no idea. He looked at her. The divine Empress. The terrified woman. The person who had anchored him. Who had shared his pain. Your hands, he said. They're shaking. I cannot seem to make them stop, she whispered, staring at her own, trembling fingers. Jace, with a groan that cost him, pushed himself into a sitting position. He was face to face with her. The smell of the chamber was ozone, blood, and the sharp metallic tang of ash. His ash. Here, he said, his voice rough. He reached out, his unmarked left hand, and he took both of her shaking hands in his. Just breathe, he said. Like we're okay. She looked at their joined hands, his calloused human and steady. Hers, pale, aristocratic, and trembling like a leaf. She laced her fingers with his, gripping him with a desperate, crushing strength. You are insane, she whispered, her eyes fixed on him. Yeah, Jace said, his voice soft. We covered this. I'm a professional idiot. You are magnificent, she said. And the distance it was gone. He didn't know who moved first. It was not a thought. It was not a plan. It was an inevitability. It was gravity. Her lips crashed against his. It was not the chaste, shocked, questioning kiss of his quarters. This was different. This was fire. It was the desperation of two people who had just walked through hell and found each other on the other side. It was raw. It tasted of ash, blood, salt, and life. Her hands left his, moving up, tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. His own hands. His left hand went to the small of her back, pulling her against him. His right hand, his branded, burning, crowned hand, came up to cup her face. And she did not flinch. She leaned into his touch, into the burning, ash-marked hand. She kissed him with a ferocity that matched his own, a raw, desperate, claiming kiss that said, you are mine, you are mine, you are mine. It was the first, real, honest thing that had happened to him in a decade, and in the center of the broken, healing, alien throne room, Jace Arden, for the first time in a very, very long time, kissed her back. The news of the cleansing of the Synod did not spread. It detonated, within hours. Every tight beam channel in the Terran-Kareth buffer zone was screaming. The Kareth Empire, a monolithic, ancient, and deeply private civilization, had just aired its bloody laundry in front of the galaxy. A High Seer had staged a coup. The Empress had been attacked, and, most impossibly, a human had saved the entire High Council. The footage, leaked from a dozen different sources, was grainy, chaotic, and utterly damning. It showed the black mist, the melting council members, and the Tharun, immune, rampaging through the traitors. But most of all, it showed a single, glowing, human-shaped figure, shielding the Empress with his own body, his arm, a white-hot beacon that seemed to command the plague. The galaxy, which had been bracing for a new, apocalyptic phase of the biowar, collectively held its breath. The bioash was no longer a weapon. It was sentient. It was sentient, and it seemed to have chosen a side. An emergency session was called by the Neutrality Council on Halcyon Station, the great, sterile, crystalline hub that sat in the dead center of the truce line. The agenda had one item, the ash contingency. I have to go, Kalith said. They were in her private strategy locus, the Velkarith holding a high, silent orbit over the wounded planet of Kairos. Jace was sitting on a bioformed console, his back aching. The Kareth doctors had done what they could, but his melted robes had been his own skin. He now had a network of faint, silvery scars on his back, a mirror to the Tharun's wounds. Of course you do. You're the main attraction. And you, she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. Are coming with me? Jace stopped rubbing his aching shoulder. I thought I was Exhibit A. You're promoting me to strategic weapon. You are my advisor, Kalith stated, walking toward him. She was in her simple, dark uniform, but the authority was back, ironclad. Marith has fled. She has taken her cult, her followers, and her edited plague with her. She is now, officially, a terrorist. She will have allies this conference, Kareth traditionalists who believe I have broken our people, and Terran traditionalists who are just fine with a civil war, so long as it kills aliens, Jace muttered. Precisely. She stopped in front of him. I cannot show weakness. Not now. I cannot hide my human anomaly. I must flaunt you. You are my proof. You are my bond. She reached out, not for his hand, but for his marked arm. Her fingers, cool and pale, traced the new, obsidian black Kareth crown that was now permanently, perfectly integrated into the ash pattern. The brand she had given him in her panic. It does not burn you, she whispered, half a question. No, Jace said, his voice quiet. It feels right. It feels warm. The journey to Halcyon took 3 days. 3 days in the strange, pulsing, organic silence of the Dreadnought's core. They were not lovers, not in the way a human would define it. They had not repeated the raw, desperate kiss from the Synod. The universe had not given them a moment's peace. Instead, they became partners. They spent the long, artificial nights on the Locus, a star map projected in the air between them. They ate their meals together, his replicated Terran rations, her nutrient-rich Kareth paste in her private chambers, strategy slates covering every surface. She dropped the Empress mask. He dropped the mask of the sarcastic, nihilistic soldier. She told him of the crushing loneliness of her divinity, of the terror she felt when she saw her council melting. She confessed that Marith had been her tutor as a child, and the betrayal felt like a part of her own body being amputated. He, in turn, told her everything. He told her about Admiral Rowan Hale, the man who had been a father figure to him, the man who had trained him, promoted him, and then, at Xylos, had ordered the massacre. He told her about the screams. He told her the moment he chose insubordination, the moment he chose to be a traitor rather than a monster. We are the same, she said, her voice soft in the dim light of the star map. She was sitting across from him, her legs curled under her on the bioformed couch. We are the ones who disobeyed. We're the adults in the room, Jace said, a new, strange weariness in his voice. And I hate adulting, she smiled, a real, small, unguarded smile. I find I like your levity, Jace Arden. It is true. Do not tell Reth, Jace said. He thinks I am a tactical liability. He does. Kalith's smile grew. He also thinks you are the most dangerous single being he has ever met. He is terrified of you. Well, Jace said, a slow, real smile of his own spreading. That is something. Their relationship was forged in those 3 days. It was not passion. It was trust. It was a deeper, deeper intimacy. It was the unspoken understanding of 2 leaders sharing the same foxhole. When the Velkarith exhaled itself into existence in the skies above Halcyon Station, they walked onto the shuttle together, not as Empress and advisor, but as allies. Halcyon Station was not sticky. It was glass, and steel, and light. A massive, crystalline ring that shone with a cold, perfect, neutral light. Calith, in her full black armor, looked alien, organic, dangerous. Jace, in his new, Kareth-tailored black uniform, Reth had insisted, with a pained grimace. "You cannot embarrass the Empress with your cloth rags." His marked arm, bare from the elbow down, he looked like her. Property, consort, weapon. Nobody knew what to call him. The looks they got as Reth and 4 massive bone-white royal guards escorted them through the main concourse were a mix of terror, disgust, and awe. "I hate this place," Jace muttered to Calith, his voice too low for anyone else to hear. "It smells like bleach and bad diplomacy." "It is the citadel of cowardice," she murmured back, her face an imperial mask. "They build with dead things, so they do not have to feel it when they break." And then Jace saw him. He stopped. He physically stopped. Reth bumped into him. Across the vast, white, sterile atrium, standing with the Terran delegation, was a man in a crisp, white admiral's uniform. His hair was silver at the temples. His face was kind, noble. The face of a hero. The face of a man who had been on every propaganda poster for 10 years. Admiral Rowan Hale. Hale's eyes met Jace's, and he smiled. A bright, warm, fatherly smile. "Jace," Hale's voice boomed across the atrium. "Jace Arden. By all that is holy, is that you, son?" He strode forward, his hand outstretched, his delegation scrambling behind him. He did not even look at Calith. He looked at Jace. "My God, boy," Hale said, his voice thick with fake emotion. "We thought we lost you at Xylos. We thought you were dead. And look at you, a survivor, a guest of the Empress herself." Jace's blood went so cold it burned. The buzzing in his head was so loud he could barely think. He felt Calith's hand lightly touch his back, anchoring him. Jace looked at Hale's outstretched hand. He looked at his own marked, ash-gray hand. He slowly raised it, and he smiled. A cold, dead, mirthless smile. "Admiral Hale," Jace said, his voice a low, gravelly purr that sounded nothing like himself. "It is good to see you, too. I guess my neurological instability was not fatal after all." Hale's smile did not falter, but his eyes went to Jace's arm, and the smile died. Just for a second. The warmth vanished, replaced by a cold, analytical, murderous light. He saw the ash. He saw the Kareth crown. "You have been through an ordeal, son," Hale said, slowly, lowering his hand. "We will have to talk, after this formality." "I look forward to it," Jace said. "I have notes." The conference hall was a sterile amphitheater. Cold white and gray, no living surfaces. Anti-bioscrubbers hummed in the air. Jace sat behind Calith. At her right hand, a position of honor, and a position of threat. The accusations began immediately. "This is an act of war. A Kareth traditionalist, a thin, reedy man in Mareth's white-gray robes, shrieked, pointing at Jace. "The Empress has consorted with a Terran spy. He has infected her beast. He is the source of the plague. He must be purified." "Purified." Hale's voice cut through the noise, calm, reasonable, fatherly. "My friends, let us not be hasty. What we see here is a tragedy. A brave Terran soldier, Major Jace Arden, a man I knew personally, a true hero captured, tortured, and used by the Kareth. His body twisted, his mind broken, turned into a living weapon. This is not a Kareth problem. This is Kareth aggression. They have lost control of their monstrous experiments." Jace just sat there, letting the bullshit wash over him. He was a pawn, a monster, a victim, a weapon. Everyone had a label for him except the woman before him. Calith rose. The chamber fell silent. "I am Empress Calith." Her voice was not loud, but it filled the room, cold and pure. "And I am not infected. I am not broken. And I am not your enemy." She looked at Hale. "Admiral, you speak of experiments. Let us speak of them. Let us speak of the experiment that was Xylos. Let us speak of the experiment that was Caldus." Hale's face did not change. "And you," she turned to the Kareth traditionalist. "You speak of Marith's purity. This is Marith's purity." She slammed her hand on a console. A massive hologram ignited in the center of the room. It was footage of the Synod, the Black Mist, the melting council members. Marith on her balcony, her hands on the console, directing the slaughter. "This was not a plague," Calith said, her voice shaking with cold fury. "This was a coup, an assassination attempt, a terrorist attack by High Seer Marith and her followers. The human you despise did not cause this. He stopped it, he shielded me, and he cleansed the Synod. He is not a weapon, he is the cure." The chamber was in chaos. Jace felt a vibration on his wrist, his old, dead Terran biomonitor, the one Mira had used. He looked down. A new message. Cloaked. Sector 4 Gamma. 2 Mins. Urgent. Jace leaned forward. "I need a bio break," he whispered to Calith. Her eyes did not leave the chaos. Now. Now. Go, Reth with him." "No," Jace said. "I am a human. I need to go alone. Unless you want Reth to watch me pee. It is part of my human filth thing. Marith's fans love it." Calith almost smiled. "Go. Be quick. Do not get killed." "My life's motto." He slipped out a side door in the ensuing chaos. Sector 4 Gamma. A sterile utility corridor. "Jace," a voice whispered. A maintenance closet opened. A small woman in a Halcyon Station maintenance jumpsuit pulled him in. It was Mira Solon. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror and excitement. "Gods! Jace, your arm! It is real!" "Mira," Jace gasped, his heart hammering. "What the hell are you doing here? Hale will have you shot." "Hale is the problem," she said, pulling up a data slate. Her hands were shaking. "I got past his firewalls. Jace, I found it. The Ash origin code." He did not destroy it. He was studying it, trying to weaponize it further. "Mira, slow down. What is it?" "It is not a weapon," she said, her voice a near hysterical whisper. "Not originally. It is ancient, Jace. Predating Terrans, predating Kareth, from a precursor race. The race we are both descended from. It was an operating system, a terraforming and evolutionary tool. It was designed to build worlds and guide life." Jace stared at her. "Guide how?" "By rewriting genetics." But it corrupted. The guide protocol became a wipe protocol. It saw imperfection as a virus. It started cleaning the system. She grabbed his marked arm. "But it is locked. It needs an administrator to run the full protocol. A key. A specific genetic sequence. Jace." Her eyes were shining with tears. "It is you. Your unstable gene marker. It is not an instability. It is the key. It is why the Ash did not kill you. It recognized you. It thought you were there to give the final wipe command." Jace's world tilted. "Me, I am the key." Suddenly, a station-wide alarm blared. Not a fire alarm. A deep, wailing, biological contamination siren. Warning. Unidentified nanite swarm detected. All zones. Warning. Catastrophic biological cascade. Imminent. Mira's face went white. "Oh no." "What?" Jace demanded, grabbing his arm, which had just ignited with a pain so vast it made the Synod feel like a pinprick. "It is here," Mira whispered, her eyes on her slate. "The original Ash core, the source code. It was not on Kiros. It was not in a Terran world. It has been here hidden in Halcyon's core this entire time, and Jace. She looked at him, her face a mask of pure horror. The proximity of you, the key, and her, the Kareth Royal line. The lock has woken it up. The lights in the corridor flickered and went red. The air grew suddenly warm, hot. Warning. All organic life. Genetic dissolution in 5 minutes. "It is running the protocol," Jace gasped, his mind racing. He could feel it in his arm. A vast, cold, ancient intelligence. Waking up, and I was pissed. "It thinks we are a virus," Jace said. "It is going to clean the station." "We have to run," Mira screamed. "Run where? Mira, it is a nanite plague. It is in the air, in the walls, it is everywhere." Jace pushed her out of the closet. "Go, get to an escape pod. Now." "What about you?" "I am the key," Jace said, his face a mask of grim resolve. "I think I have to go talk to the manager." He shoved her down the hall. "Go," he ran. Back to the conference hall. It was pandemonium. Delegates were screaming, clutching their chests, their implants overheating. Hale was gone, fled. Kaleth was there. Reth and her guards in a defensive circle. She was standing alone, a bio-rifle in her hand, her eyes scanning the crowd for him. "Jace!" she cried when she saw him. He ran to her, panicking. "It is here!" he gasped. "The original Ash. It is awake." "What do we do?" Reth bellowed, his rifle useless. "It is a network," Jace said, his arm feeling like it was in a furnace. "A mind. A broken mind. It wants to wipe us." He looked at Kaleth. "I have to go in." "Where do you go?" she demanded. "Into it. The network. I am the key. I think I can talk about it. I think I can fix it." "That is insane!" Reth shouted. "Genetic dissolution in 1 minute." "We are out of options, Captain," Jace roared. He grabbed Kaleth by her armor. "Kaleth, listen to me. I need you to trust me. I am going to sit. I'll look like I'm in a coma. You have to protect my body. Do not let anyone move me. Do not let them disconnect me, no matter what happens. Do you understand?" Her violet eyes were wide, terrified, but she nodded. "I understand. I will protect you." "Good. This is going to suck." Jace sat cross-legged on the floor, in the eye of the storm. He closed his eyes. He grabbed his burning, marked arm. "Okay," he whispered to the ancient intelligence. "You and me, let's talk." He dove. There was no light, no sound. There was only the network, a vast, cold, infinite sea of data and pain. He was floating in a choir of 1,000,000,000 screaming voices, the voices of every person ever killed by the Ash. Rook, the colonists at Xylos, the council members in the Synod, decades of war, suffering, and hatred, all collected by one, ancient, broken AI. You are a virus. The voice was everywhere. It was the 1,000,000,000 voices speaking as one. It was Will Ash. You, Terran, Kareth. You are imperfect. You are filth. You use life to kill. You are a system error. The system must be reset. Jace's mind self was reeling. He was drowning in the pain. He saw Hale's smug face. He saw Marith's fanaticism. He saw his own cynicism. "You're right," Jace's thought voice whispered. "We are. We're broken. We're violent. We're stupid. We hurt each other. Agreement. Protocol wipe. Executing." "No," Jace said. His mind self stood up in the howling data storm. "No, that is not all we are. You're wrong. Incorrect. I am data. I have collected all evidence. The evidence is pain. You maggot-ridden piece of code." Jace roared. "You have not been collecting data. You have been hoarding the bad parts. You missed the rest. The rest is not relevant. It is the only thing that is relevant, Jace shouted, and he pushed. He pushed his own memories online, not as data, as a feeling. He pushed the memory of his unit at Xylos, the fear, and the pride. Them choosing to die together, for a moral line. You see war, he screamed. I see sacrifice. He pushed the memory of kneeling in the mud on Caldus, the pain, the terror, and the overwhelming, stupid, human need to save the dying Tharoon. You see violence, I see compassion. The data storm faltered. The trillion voices hissed, irrelevant, anomalies. Then, how about this anomaly? He pushed the Synod's memory. Not the battle, not the fire, the after, Calith, her hands shaking, him, taking her hands, and the kiss. The raw, unfiltered, desperate kiss of two broken people choosing to trust. Of an Empress, kissing a man with plague on his skin. You see a virus, Jace's mind roared, his own light now a beacon in the darkness. I see love. We are broken. We are flawed. But we are trying. We fail. We get back up. We choose to be better. That is the real protocol. System conflict. You bet your ass it is. Jace found the root command. The ancient, corrupted line of code that said, wipe. I am the key, he screamed. I am the administrator, and I am giving a new directive. He grabbed the code. He rewrote it. He poured his own stubborn, human will into it. The new directive, he panted, his mind feeling like it was tearing apart. The new directive is not wipe. It is fix. It is heal. He slammed his will down. Wipe became heal. And the trillion voices went silent. Jace's consciousness slammed back into his body like a physical blow. He gasped, his eyes open. He was choking on air. The alarms were silent. The red lights were off. The air was cool. He was in Calith's lap. He had not realized. She was cradling his head, her body shielding him. Reth and the guards were in a circle around them, rifles out, sweat pouring down their faces. Jace, Calith's voice was a broken whisper. He looked up at her. In the conference hall, a Terran delegate looked at his implant monitor. The nanite warning. It is gone. He tapped his temple. My biomonitor. It is green. It is optimizing my heart rate. It is healing my synapses. Jace looked back at Calith. A slow, exhausted, utterly insufferable grin spread across his face. I think, he gasped, his arm pulsing with a calm, warm, silver light. I think I just fixed the internet. Jace woke up to the smell of bleach and the steady, infuriatingly calm beep of a Terran biomonitor. The throbbing, organic warmth of the Kareth dreadnought was gone, replaced by sterile white walls, cold, synthesized sheets, and the flat, artificial light of Halcyon Station's medical bay. His body felt like it had been used as a climbing rope by a very large, very angry mountain. His head throbbed. His arm was just a dull, warm weight, the silver and black pattern pulsing gently under the white, medical lighting. He is awake. The voice was a Terran doctor, clipped and professional. Do not poke me. Jace's voice was a dry, gravelly rasp. I am not a zoo animal. A cool hand, small and pale, suddenly gripped him. It was not a doctor's hand. It was a hand he now knew better than his. Jace! He turned his head, his muscles screaming in protest. Calith was sitting beside his bed. She was not in her armor, or her robes. She was in a simple, black Kareth uniform, her face pale, her hair unbound, and dark circles of exhaustion under her violet eyes. She looked, he thought, utterly wrecked, and beautiful. He tried to grin, but it felt more like a grimace. Did we win, or did I just get us all killed slightly slower? You fixed it, she whispered. Her voice was raw, stripped of all imperial authority. "Jace, you fixed it." He saw it then. They were not alone. The medbay was a hub of activity. Terran doctors and Kareth bioscientists. The two groups that had been trying to kill each other for a generation were working side by side, their faces a mask of stunned, disbelieving awe. And they were all, every single one of them, staring at the Empress of the Kareth, who was holding a human's hand, like he was the only thing keeping the station in orbit. "This is a bad look for you," Jace rasped, his fingers tightening on hers. "Your fans will talk." "Let them," she said, and her grip was iron. She did not care. She did not look away from him. That image, broadcast on every channel out of Halcyon, was the one that truly ended the war. Not the battle, not the treaty, but the image of the Kareth Empress, the Ash Queen, the corpse monarch, refusing to leave the bedside of a human healer. The change was almost instantaneous. The moment Jace had forced the heal command, the ancient network had obeyed. The trillions of nanites that saturated the war-torn sectors of the galaxy, the ash that was a death sentence, all received a new directive. On Halcyon, the delegates who had been clutching their overheating implants, who had been feeling their very genes begin to unravel, felt a sudden, cool, silver wave. They did not die. Their implants did not fail. They were optimized. Their genetic code was not dissolved. It was repaired. Reports flooded across the galaxy. On the plague world of Xylos, the colony Jace had failed to save. The gray ash that choked the atmosphere began to settle. It did not just clear the air. It began to cleanse the soil, neutralizing the very poisons it had once spread. On Kairos, the Great Scourge, the sickness that Mareth had used to fuel her holy war, vanished in a single, planet-wide pulse. Kareth, who had been dying in the lower city, their bodies riddled with tissue lesions, woke up. The lesions were not gone. They were scared. The ash did not erase. I did not forget. It healed. It left scars. A permanent, galaxy-wide reminder of the war that had been. But the wounds were, for the first time, closed. Admiral Rowan Hale did not know how to handle a galaxy that was not at war. He tried, of course. His faction, reeling from the Halcyon event, immediately began broadcasting, painting Jace as the single greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. "This is not a cure," Hale's voice, once so fatherly, was now sharp with a new, frantic edge. "It is Control Major Arden, a man we now know was deeply unstable, has seized control of the entire bioash network. He is, this very moment, a weapon holding a gun to the head of every living being in the Alliance. He has a heal switch, but he also has a wipe switch. We must demand his immediate neutralization." It was a good speech. It might have even worked, had the Halcyon core logs not been made public. The logs were illuminating. They showed, in cold, hard data, that the ancient ash core had been pinged by two separate, unauthorized sources for the last 6 months. One source was traced to a Kareth traditionalist cell, led by High Seer Mareth. The other was traced to a high-level, encrypted terminal within Terran Alliance Fleet Command. They had not been trying to start the apocalypse. They had been trying to control it. Hale and Mareth, two sides of the same, bloody coin, had both known the core was on Halcyon. They had both been trying to find the key to either restart the war on their terms, or to seize the network as the ultimate deterrent. They had not been trying to save the galaxy. They had been trying to own it. The conference, which had dissolved in panic, was reconvened as a formal tribunal. Jace walked in on his own 2 feet. He was dressed in a simple, black, Halcyon-neutral uniform, provided by a very confused and grateful station administrator. He was still weak, his back stiff from the new, silvery scars. But he walked. Hale was there, at the Terran delegation table, his face a perfect, noble mask of concern. Marith was not. She was now the most wanted terrorist in the galaxy. A warrant for her arrest issued by her own Empress. A Neutrality Council adjudicator. A dry, precise being from a species that did not believe in emotions, called the First Witness. We call Jace Arden, Terran, unaffiliated. Jace walked to the center of the sterile, white hall. He did not look at Hale. He did not look at Calith, who sat with her delegation, her face an unreadable, imperial mask. Mr. Arden, the adjudicator began. You have been called many things in the last 72 hours. A weapon, a hero, a monster, a savior. What are you? Jace looked at his right arm. The silver and black pattern, the Kareth crown, was calm. He could feel, even now, the gentle healing thrum of the network he commanded. I am a former major of the Terran Alliance, Jace said, his voice clear and steady, echoing in the silent hall. I was a biowarfare specialist, and I was exiled for refusing an order. He turned. Then, he looked, for the first time, at Admiral Rowan Hale. Admiral, Jace said, his voice polite. Do you remember the Battle of Xylos? Hale's face did not move. I remember a great victory, Major, and a great loss. Your unit. My unit, Jace cut him off, his voice still quiet, but now with an edge of pure, cold steel. My unit was the Victory Battalion. We were ordered to deploy bioash to a civilian population center. I refused the order. A difficult battlefield decision, Hale said, his voice smooth. You were too close. Your judgment was compromised. My judgment, Jace said, was that gassing 300,000 civilians was a war crime. Your order, Admiral, was to override my refusal and deploy the ash remotely, from your flagship, 100,000 miles away from the screams. The hall was silent. My unit, my friends, were vaporized, Jace continued, his voice never rising. And I was the sole survivor. I was picked up, court-martialed for insubordination and dereliction of duty, and, most conveniently, I was diagnosed by your personal medical staff as neurologically unstable. I was buried on Caldus, an ash cleaner, left to rot. Not a hero, not a survivor, just a loose end. Hale's heroic mask was beginning to crack. His jaw was tight. Admiral Hale, Jace said, calls me a weapon. He says I am a threat. He is correct. I am his threat. I am the man who saw what he did. I am the loose end that did not unravel. Hale finally broke. This is slander, the ravings of a traitor, a man who has clearly been corrupted by the Kareth. Look at him. Their Empress marks him. Yes, Calith's voice said, cutting through the tension. She rose. He is. She walked from her delegation, not to Jace, but to the central console. And he marks me. We are bonded, and as such, we share data. She placed a Kareth data crystal on the console. Admiral Hale's testimony is a lie, but he is not the only one who lied. A new file appeared on the main hologram. It was not Kareth data. It was Terran. Encrypted logs, fleet movements, and personal communications. While I was fighting Marith, Calith said, her voice a cold, furious river. She was communicating with a high-level asset within the Terran fleet, an asset providing her with data on the Ash Key, Jace Arden, and collaborating in a plan to seize the Halcyon core, a plan to sacrifice both their fleets in a final, tragic battle, allowing them to take control of the network in the chaos. She looked at Admiral Rowan Hale. The asset was you. The room exploded. Hale lunged to his feet. This is a fabrication, alien lies. The data is authenticated, the neutral adjudicator said, his voice flat. He had been reviewing it. The encryption is Terran. Admiral's code. It is valid. Jace watched Hale. The man's face had gone white. The hero was gone. All that was left was a hollow, terrified old man. He had risked everything. He had killed thousands. He had sacrificed his own son, Jace, all for power, and he had lost. "Admiral Rowan Hale," the adjudicator said, "you are hereby detained by the Neutrality Council, pending a full war crimes tribunal. Terran security will take him." Two Terran guards, their faces white with shock and disgust, walked up to their hero. "Admiral," one said, his voice shaking, "please come with us." Hale looked at Jace. Just once. His eyes were empty. Not angry, not sad. Just empty. The look of a man who had been truly and utterly beaten. Jace felt nothing. No triumph. No joy. Just a vast, cold emptiness. His revenge was complete. It was not a bang. It was a data file. It was the truth. He turned and left the hall. He did not wait for Caleth. He just needed to be alone. He spent the next few days in his medbay room. Caleth had him moved to her private Kareth delegation suite. It was organic, warm, and pulsing. It felt like home. He was recovering, but something was wrong. He was not just Jace. He could feel the network, not as a voice, but as a sense. He could sense life at the station. He knew the Kareth doctor down the hall was having an anxiety attack. He knew that Mira Solon, who had been quietly given diplomatic asylum by Caleth, was drinking a very bad cup of synthesized coffee. He could feel the ash, now renamed the Astrian network, gently regulating the station's air, optimizing the neural pathways of a Terran delegate, recovering from a stroke. He was connected to everything, and he was terrified. "I do not know where I end and it begins," he confessed to Caleth one night. They were on the suite's living balcony, gazing at the stars. "I am not human anymore. Am I? I am just a terminal, a node, a tool." Caleth was silent for a long time. She was drinking hot Kareth tea. She turned to him. "I have been a tool my entire life," she said softly. "I was the vessel. I was the will of Kyros. I was a thing, not a person. I did not know what Caleth was. I thought she did not exist." She put down her cup. She took his marked hand. "You are not losing yourself, Jace," she said, her violet eyes fierce. "You are becoming more. You were a man who was forced to be a weapon, a tool for death. The network did not erase you. You erased it. You took a trillion screaming voices of hate and you taught them compassion. You taught them how to heal. You did not become the network. The network became you." He stared at her. He had never thought of it like that. "It is not a loss," she whispered. "It is evolution. It is the mark of a new age. And you are not a tool. You are its master." "I do not want to be a master," he said, his voice thick. "I know." She smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "That is why you are the only one who can be." Their relationship settled. It was not the Synod's fiery passion. It was deeper. It was a long, quiet evening. Her working on a new Kareth constitution. Him learning how to use his healing sense to help the station's doctors. It was a shared understanding, a partnership. They were two broken people who had been forged into tools, and had instead chosen to be people. Together. Reth Kalen interrupted them once, walking in unannounced to find Jace and Caleth arguing over a holographic projector. "My Empress." "He is cheating," Caleth snapped, pointing at Jace. "I am not cheating," Jace protested. "I am just better at Terran chess." On the projector, a hologram of Tharun was watching the game. The beast let out a bored bellow. Reth just stared. "My Empress. The Alliance Council has agreed to the new accord. They are ready." Caleth sighed, switching off the game. She gave Jace a look. "This is not over." Yes, Your Highness, Jace said, grinning. Halcyon Station returned to order. The Terran Alliance, now leaderless and shamed, was forced to negotiate. The Kareth Empire, now united behind a proven, powerful Empress, led the talks. They signed the Halcyon Accord. All bioash programs were to be dismantled. The Astrian network was to be classified as a neutral, sentient entity, dedicated to healing and reconstruction. And at the center of the accord was Jace. He was no longer a prisoner, but he was not free. He was named the primary liaison to the network. The linchpin. The one person who could truly speak to it. It was a burden. He was again a key asset, most precious man in the galaxy. He stood on the balcony of their suite, looking at the final treaty. It is a heavy weight, Calith said, coming to stand beside him. Yeah, Jace said. I just traded one prison for another. A gilded one. Is it a prison? She asked. If you chose it. He looked at her. I did not choose it. No, she conceded, a small smile playing on her lips. You chose to save a dying beast. You chose to shield your enemy. You chose to rewrite a god. You did not choose this life, Jace Arden. You earned it. He looked back at the stars. He was a healer, a diplomat, the Ash Key. It was a hell of a thing. He sighed. It was a lot. But as he felt her hand slide into his, her cool skin against his warm, marked arm, he figured he did not have to bear it alone, and that made it a relief. There is one more place we must go, Calith said. The Halcyon Accord was signed. The delegates, reeling from the revelations and the sheer raw terror of the network's awakening, had agreed to everything. Hale was in a Terran brig, his career a pile of ash. Marith was a ghost, hunted by Kareth and Terran forces alike. The galaxy, for the first time in a century, was quiet. I thought we were done with places, Jace said. He was standing on the Velkareth's bridge, which had docked with Halcyon. I was looking forward to a solid 8 hours of not being a linchpin, maybe 12. I am tired. I am emotionally wrecked, and my back still itches. This is not for the delegates, Calith said. She was in her simple, black uniform, her face serious. This is not for the Accord. This is for you. For me, I hate things that are for me. They usually involve pain, explosions, or a sudden, unwanted career change. All three. This time, she said, her voice devoid of humor. Come, Reth will guard the bridge. Reth Kalen, who had been standing at a tactical console, merely nodded. His expression towards Jace was no longer hatred, or even awe. It was a kind of grudging, deeply confused respect. Advisor, my Empress, do not get dissolved. The paperwork would be extensive. See, Jace muttered, as he followed Calith into a private transport. Bromance. Calith did not take him to the diplomatic levels. She did not take him to the Kareth suites. She took him down. Down past the sterile, white plasteel and glass station. Down into the raw, ancient, mechanical core that the polished modern Halcyon was built around. This was the old station, the precursor hub that Mira had mentioned. The air was cold, metallic, and smelled of ancient oil and ozone. This is a forbidden sector, Calith said, her voice low. She placed her hand on a rusted, ancient console. It hissed, and a massive lead-lined door ground open. Halcyon security keeps it sealed. They believe it is an unstable reactor. They are partly right. They entered a vast, dark, circular chamber. It was cold, but the air was not dead. It was a library, not books, but life. Thousands upon thousands of glowing, crystalline rods, each taller than a man, were arranged in concentric circles, pulsing with a faint, internal, biotic light. "What is this?" Jace whispered. The buzz in his head, the network, was silent here. This place was shielded. "This is the Halcyon Biocore," Caliph said, her voice echoing in the vastness. "The true reason both Terrans and Kareth wanted this station? It is a repository, a genetic library left by the progenitors, the ones who came before." She walked to the center of the chamber, to a single, pulsing, amber-colored crystal. Mira Solon was correct. This is not a weapons cache. It is an archive. The history of our evolution. She touched the crystal. A low, fluting chime sounded, and a complex, holographic lattice of genetic code filled the air. "This," Caliph said, pointing to a thick, complex, double helix strand, "is the Kareth genome. As it was 10,000 years ago." She then pointed to another strand, strikingly similar, that ran parallel to it. "And this is the Terran genome." Jay stared. We really are related." "Branches of the same tree," Caliph said. "We diverged. We chose different paths. My people embraced biological integration. Yours chose metal and fire. But we are cousins." She manipulated the hologram. "And this is what we shared." A third strand appeared, a smaller, tighter, impossibly complex sequence. It was not Terran. It was not Kareth. It was another. "The Ash origin code," Jace breathed. "The operating system." Yes, it was not a weapon. It was a tool, an evolutionary catalyst. Our ancestors used it. They guided their own development. She zoomed in on the progenitor code, and a line of pictographic script, ancient and alien, appeared beside it. "This archive," Caliph said, "is the only place this text still exists. A manual. It speaks of the network, the Astrian's breath, and it speaks of its guardian." She isolated a single passage. "It is called the Ash Keybearer, the administrator, as you called it. Not a god, a regulator, a single, genetic sequence capable of accessing the root code, of interfacing with the network, of commanding its directives, a failsafe, to prevent the network from corrupting." "Which it did anyway," Jace said, his mouth dry. "Because the keybearer was lost," Caliph said. "The bloodline was thinned, diluted, forgotten." Until Jace's blood became cold. He already knew. He did not want to know. Caliph tapped another console. A new strand of genetic code appeared in the air. "Hi. Mira Solon sent me your file. Jace," she said, her voice quiet. "When I was Empress, and you were no one." She was a scientist, terrified of Hale, terrified of what the Ash was becoming. She saw your file, your instability. She saw your genetic marker. She did not know what it meant. She just knew it was different. She sent it to me, as a desperate, last-ditch effort. A Terran begging a Kareth Empress to do something. She overlaid Jace's genetic marker with the ancient progenitor keybearer code. They did not just match. They were not similar. They were identical. A 100% match. Jace stared at the glowing, holographic proof of his entire, ruined life. I, he stammered. "I am not immune by luck." "No," Caliph said, her voice flat, her eyes fixed on the code. "You are not. You are it. The last surviving heir. The 1 in a trillion key. You were not chosen. You were designed. A genetic echo, waiting for the network to awaken." Jace felt his knees go weak. He felt hollow. He had not been a hero. He had not been a defiant soldier. He had not chosen anything. He was a key, a piece of biological machinery, born to fit a single, ancient lock. "All of it," he whispered, his voice cracking. "All of it. My insubordination, my instability, my survival. It was just a program, running its course." He felt a bitter, Hysterical laugh bubble in his chest. I am a tool. He turned to look at her. The pain. The betrayal. It was unimaginable. And you, he whispered, the truth coalescing in his mind with horrifying clarity. You knew. Caliph did not flinch. She met his gaze. Her violet eyes were unreadable. Yes. The single word. It broke him. How long? Since Mira sent me the data, Caliph said, her voice a monotone. 6 months before Caldus. Jace could not breathe. 6 months. You knew I existed. You knew what I was. I knew what your gene marker was, she corrected him, her voice cold. I knew there was a key, and I knew Hale was burying it, hiding it. So you leaked it, Jace realized, his mind racing, piecing it all together. The rumors of my instability, my court-martial. Hale did not just bury me. He was forced to, by you. You manipulated him. I used his own paranoia against him, Caliph said. I ensured your exile was absolute, that you would be sent to the one place he would never look for you, the most dangerous ash front in the galaxy. Caldus. Jace stared at her. The woman he trusted. The woman he had kissed in the ruins of her synod. Tharun, Jace whispered, his voice dead. Your beast. His accident. Being left behind. On Caldus. Caliph closed her eyes. It was not an accident. It was a gamble. A horrible, necessary gamble. My bond with him was failing. He was dying of ash disease. I could not save him. Marith was using his sickness to undermine me. I had to act. So you sacrificed your beast, Jace said, his voice filled with a cold disgust. You marooned him on a plague world, hoping that the key you had also marooned there would just stumble over him. Yes, Caliph said, her eyes opening, meeting him. Fierce, unapologetic. I did. I staged the battle. I ensured your cleaning patrol was in that sector. I put the key next to the lock. And I prayed to a progenitor. I do not believe that you were not just a key, that you were a man who would choose to save a dying monster. Jace remembered her words, the words that had defined his new life, the words spoken over him in the mud and the ash. You touched my dying beast in the war ash, Jace recited, his voice hollow. From this moment, you are mine. He looked at her, the betrayal of physical force, crushing his chest. It was not a declaration, he whispered. It was not a reaction. It was a legal claim, a political move, part of your plan, to use the Savior's claim to take possession of me, to mark me with your sigil, so I could be your ash healer, your tool. Yes, Caliph said, her voice firm. Jace just stared at her. He had no words. He had nothing. He had been playing, from start to finish, by Hale, by Marith, and now, most cruelly, most completely, by her. He turned, and he walked. Jace, her voice called after him, losing its iron, becoming human. He did not stop. He walked out of the archive. He walked out of the core. He did not know where he was going. He just knew he had to get away from her, from the lie. He spent that night in a sterile, white, halcyon transit lounge, anonymous, empty. He just sat in a chair, watching the station's traffic move past the viewport. He was shattered. He questioned everything. Was any of it real? His choice on Caldus. Had he really chosen it? Or had he been genetically programmed to be compassionate? Was his HFY moment in the network his own will? Or had he just been a key, turning in a lock, and Caliph? Her fear, her confessions, her trust, the kiss. Was it all just part of the manipulation? Just the next step in her plan to keep her tool loyal? He felt the anger, a cold, burning rage, at her, at the progenitors, in the universe. He had been a pawn in everyone's game. He sat there for hours. The anger burned, and then it cooled. He thought about it. He thought about her face, not in the archive, but in the synod. She had planned to take him to Kiros. Yes. She had planned to use him to heal Tharun. Yes. A cold, pragmatic imperial plan. But she had not planned on Mareth staging a coup. She had not planned on Black Haze. She had not planned on him tackling her. She had not planned on him catching fire. And she had not planned on panicking and branding him with her own soul. And the network. She had not known the core was on Halcyon. She had not known it would awaken. She had not planned on him diving into it. Her terror when he did that had been real. Her cradling his comatose body in her lap while the galaxy ended. That was not in any plan. The plan had ended on Kaldis. Everything after that, whatever mattered, had been chaos. It had been real. He was a key, genetically. But he was the one who had chosen to turn it. He was the one who had chosen heal instead of wipe. The network had expected a command. He had given it an argument. His HFY moment. That had been all him. All his stubborn, human spite. He had been put on the stage. Yes. But he had written his own damned lines. He stood up. He felt the anger settle. It was still there. A cold, hard lump. But it was not rage. It was clear. He walked back. Back to the Kareth suite. She was there. On the balcony. She had not slept. She was just standing. Her back to the door, watching the sunrise glint off the station's hull. He walked out to stand beside her. She did not look at him. "I did not lie," she whispered to the stars. "Not about us. The plan was to secure a tool, to save my people. It was an Empress's calculus, cold and necessary." She turned to him then, her violet eyes raw, vulnerable. "I did not plan on being a stubborn, sarcastic, infuriatingly moral man. I did not plan on him making me laugh. I did not plan on being terrified of losing him. I did not plan on falling in love with him." Jace took a long breath. He let it out. "I am angry," he said, his voice quiet, calm. "I am furious. You used me. You played God with my life. You are a cold, manipulative, calculating Empress, and I will probably never fully trust you again. Not in that way." He saw her flinch. Her face paled. "But," he continued, "I also see the opportunity. You put me on the board. You made me a player, whether you meant to or not." He held up his marked arm, the silver and black key. "I accept this role," he said. "The Ash Key Bearer. I accept it. Not because of your plan. Not because of some progenitor's design. But because of me. I am choosing it. Right now. And I am going to use it to make damn sure that no one, not Terran or Kareth, is ever used as a tool again. Not by Hale. Not by Mareth. And not by you." She stared at him, her eyes wide. She had expected rage, or forgiveness. She had not expected a partnership proposal, a declaration of intent. A slow, trembling smile touched her lips. "So we are to be partners, you and I, the Key and the Empress. We are going to be co-CEOs of this whole saving the galaxy mess," Jace said. "And we are going to have a lot of meetings. And I am going to argue with you. A lot." "I look forward to it," she whispered. The final scene was weeks later. The Accord was in full swing. Halcyon was the new capital of a new era. Jace and Caleth stood on the grand balcony of the diplomatic tower. Between them, its midnight blue hide gleaming, its sapphire eyes bright and intelligent, sat Tharun. The beast had been brought to the station, a living symbol of the new peace. He was purring as Jace scratched his ear ridge. Below them, in the main plaza, The first contingents of Terran and Kareth scientists and doctors were boarding a ship. Their mission Xylos, the first joint healing project. "It is starting," Kaleth said, her hand resting on Tharun's flank. Her other hand rested on Jace's shoulder. "Yeah," Jace said. He felt the network. He felt hope for those below. It was a nice change from screaming. "You know," Kaleth said, a rare, playful light in her eyes. "As the primary liaison and the Ash Key, you are technically now a protected Kareth Terran asset, a living national treasure." She smiled. "You are living on national property." Jace stopped scratching the beast. He turned slowly. He looked at her. "You try treating me like property one more time," he said, his voice a low growl, and he grabbed her by the waist, pulled her away from the monster, and kissed her. It was not a desperate kiss. It was not an angry kiss. It was a long, slow, deeply complicated kiss. A kiss that said, "I am still mad at you, but you are stuck with me." A kiss that promised much debate, and a lot of healing. Tharun let out a bored bellow, looking at the two strange, flawed, hopeful creatures who had somehow become his pack. The future was uncertain. The scars were still there. But for the first time in a long time, the galaxy felt like it was finally choosing to be better.